Thank you, everyone. Again, keep in mind that this month is not only Law Enforcement Week, and it's on the 14th, we're going to have another council meeting, and during that council meeting, we'll have a proclamation for Peace Officers Memorial Day as well that happens this month. So, but all the time, not just this month, keep in mind our law enforcement officials through various levels throughout our nation that keep us safe, enforce the laws, and are the professionals that we rely on in good times and bad. So next up is item number 4. We have a proclamation. This is the Mayor's Monarch Pledge, and I'd ask Cynthia Segovia and Jan Martin to come on up. And in full disclosure, Jan didn't know she was coming up here. But come on up over here. Okay, so we have a proclamation. Whereas the monarch butterfly is an iconic North American species whose multi-generational migration and metamorphosis from caterpillar to butterfly has captured the imagination of millions of Americans, and whereas 25 years ago, more than 1 billion eastern monarch butterflies migrated to Mexico, but in the winter of 2018, an estimated 200 million made the trip, and whereas cities, towns, and countries have a critical role to play to help save the monarch butterfly, and the city of Garden Ridge is taking a leadership role by launching milkweeds for monarchs. And whereas every citizen of Garden Ridge can make a difference for the monarch by planting native milkweed and nectar plants to provide habitat for the monarch and pollinators in locations where people live, work, learn, play, and worship. And whereas on behalf of the people of Garden Ridge who have already joined me in creating this healthy habitat for these magnificent butterflies, I am honored to lead the way by signing the National Wildlife Federation's Mayor's Monarch Pledge, and so that the monarch butterfly will once again flourish. Now, therefore, be it resolved that I, Larry Thompson, Mayor Garden Ridge, Texas, do hereby proclaim the day of May 1st, 2019 as Mayor's Monarch Day. Monarch Pledge Day, excuse me, and witness there set upon my hand with the official seal, and I'm signing it right now. Okay, so we have a couple of people that have led the charge on this, and I asked them if they would join me for the pledge and a picture. Come on over, come on over. And present this to y'all. And Ms. Segovia will go ahead and give us a couple remarks. Go right ahead.
Well, I just want to thank the mayor and the council for putting Garden Ridge forward as a National Wildlife Federation monarch butterfly city. The monarchs are really an amazing phenomenon, migrating all the way from Canada to Mexico, if you can imagine that. And cities such as ours are helping to bring back the monarchs, who also serve as an ambassador for all of our pollinators. So I want to specifically thank Jan Martin and Rick Cross, who worked tirelessly with the Comel Master Gardeners volunteers to expand on the work that was started by Kathy and Shelby Trial to create our Monarch Way Station right out here. And I want to thank Linda Potts, too, I don't know if she's here, who added to the Park Lane Park to create another pollinator garden for our monarchs. So thank you all. I really appreciate it. And so do our monarchs.
Okay, moving on. I'm going to stay down here because now we have a presentation, and I'd ask Linda Crossland, our librarian, to come on up. This is item number 5, presentations. And we are fortunate. Ms. Crossland does a great job of plugging into every possible source there is for grants and positive attention and positive work to the library. And this is just one of those examples. So I'm going to read this to you. This is Texas Library Grants, Texas Book Festival. The Texas Book Festival 2019 Collections Enhancement Grant is hereby awarded to Garden Ridge Library to enhance or develop your materials collection and to encourage reading in your community. And it's signed by the executive director as well as the board chair of Texas Library Grants. And so I asked Linda to come up here to accept this and also to say a few words. But if you don't know, We have the best little library in Texas, and we have an army of volunteers that keep the wheels turning at the library with all of the activities, all of the facility and everything else. And I'd say that if you haven't spent any time in the library, please, if nothing else, go in there and say hello and thank you. And if you're so inclined, go in there and see how you can contribute as well. As I said, it turns with the volunteers, and we can always use more. But in this case, getting a grant is something that's fantastic. And Linda, we really appreciate that you put in for this. And let's stand over here so you can get a good picture. Send this to them.
Yes.
Thank you. And you want to talk to them?
I can talk into that since I'm already up.
Okay.
Okay, I won't take too long. The mission statement of the Texas Book Festival is to inspire Texans of all ages to love reading. It's plain and simple. But they put their money where their mouth is. They give away about $100,000 a year out of a foundation that they have founded. Laura Bush is the honorary chairman of this great organization. Now, in my application, I said we want to help our children's collection grow. Children's books get very loved, so loved, in fact, they may be torn or written on. A little girl came up to me and she said, "It's broken. It's missing it's Beauty and the Beast, but the beast's head is gone." They love Berenstain Bears. Look at this teeny tiny little book. It gets lost on the shelves. They can't find it. Or some of you may have read The Black Stallion growing up, and it's something about when grandma or grandpa says, "Oh, read this, you'll love it." They go, "Oh, no thanks." On the other hand, they may come to you and say, "Here's Captain Underpants, read it, you'll love it." And it's your turn to say, "Ugh, no thank you." So we are very grateful to the Texas Book Festival for their generosity and encouragement. And I know our children are going to really love the $2,500 worth of books that we will buy. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, everyone. You'll see that item number 5B is a presentation from our chief appraiser, and I don't believe he's here yet. He sent us a note, said that he would be running late, so what we're going to do is we're going to press on, hold that item, and when he arrives, I'll look for a good break, and we'll go ahead and have him give his remarks. And just to let you know, the reason why he's coming is because obviously a lot of people have gotten appraisals lately that they've had questions about. And so I had a talk with him and asked him if he would come in and explain where those appraisals are coming from, what's going on, and give us maybe a little bit of insight into what the appraisal district has come up with. But for now, we're going to put item B aside. Moving on to item 6, and I'll turn to our city administrator.
Chief Everhart received a thank you note. Then I'm going to kind of read a few things that this individual mentioned in their note. It says, "Dear Chief, to you, the mayor, all the officers, your staff, I thank you sincerely. This individual enjoyed each and every aspect of the recent CPA course, or Citizens Police Academy, that was held very recently. They go on to say, but especially your amazing officers. Each and every one of them are top-notch professionals." And she further says, "Thank you. Two simple words, not nearly enough to convey gratitude and admiration. You will always have my gratitude." I thought it was a very, very nice thank you note to the police department.
Yes, and
Thank you, Mayor.
Chief, pass on thank you to all your officers, because I know all of your officers were involved in that class, and we really appreciate it, and brought a lot more people into the fold, if you will, of knowing what you all do. So thank you. Appropriate that you would get that this month as well. Okay, there's another item that, it was really strange. When I got the first version of this, there was an item on here, and I didn't think it was appropriate, but then on second thought, I think maybe I'm going to add it back on there, and I hope the attorney will forgive me, but for some reason on here, it said, "Sing happy birthday to Marissa." And so, that said, I'm going to ask you to join me in singing happy birthday to our city secretary, but I will turn my mic off when I do it, so. And for the record, she really did put it on the agenda, and she said, "I just wanted to see if you were paying attention." And I was. So happy birthday, Marissa. Okay, moving on now to item 7. We have citizen comment period. I have some people who signed up, and there are some faces in here that I don't recognize as having been here before, so I feel compelled, and some people have heard this before, I apologize, but it's important that you understand that by law, when people are up here speaking, it's a one-way conversation. We're not allowed to respond, and we just will sit here and listen to what you got to say. It may create something for us in a future meeting, but we won't be able to respond. The other thing about that is I can tell you that some of us, and myself included, I write down everything that people say when they're up here. So it's going to look like I'm just looking down. It's not that I'm daydreaming or I'm falling asleep. I'll be glad to show you my notes over the last couple of years of what people have said. So we keep track of it. And of course, it's also now being recorded and streamed. So we'll start out, and the first person on here says that she prefers to go last. So now I'm going to go with the second person on here, which is Martha Stipp. Remember, you come up here, you have 3 minutes. Name and address do not count against your 3 minutes.
Hello, good evening. My name is Martha Stipp. I live at 21007 Cedar Branch, Garden Ridge Estates. My reason for being up here tonight primarily is to thank Councilman Erickson for his service in serving the city and being the liaison for the Wildlife Commission. I've been to every one of those meetings but 2, and every time I've had a question or a concern, you have always promptly and courteously addressed my issue, and I really appreciate it, and I wish you were still staying on the council. So anyway, that was my main reason to be here. But then something came up this afternoon that kind of concerns me. I was contacted by a person who is running for election through private message, which I won't tell you the whole thing. But information was revealed in there about where my campaign signs were purchased. The only place that was mentioned was in my campaign forms that I had to file with the city. I don't understand, is this open records where people can come in and find out what you put on your campaign finance forms? If so, does it require an open records request? Because I have one out right now since before the forum on the 15th that I haven't gotten back. So there seems to be quite a delay, and it kind of upset me that somebody who shouldn't know knows stuff about my campaign. And I hope that tightens up, or at least somebody tell me what the rules are about getting that information. I really didn't appreciate that. Anyway, thank you, and thank you, Rob.
Okay, next up we have Tony Overman.
Good evening, Council and Mayor. My name is Tony Overman, and I live at 18955 FM 2252. This should be really quick and short. The only reason I'm here is that about a week ago, I received a call from two individuals that stated that my name was brought up in a meeting in front of about 150 citizens, and I guess some of you at the council were there, of the council, I'm sorry, and they addressed it in a way that stated that I was for a septic system down on the corner development. I'm the owner of the corner, and my plans have been with the city and with city council. I've been before you several times that I would like to develop that corner, and I'd like to put in a lot of different things like restaurants and things that the community could use and would enjoy. And this individual stated that from this is hearsay from the two people who called me, that this person said that I was kind of endorsing and wanted to do what Mr. Overman wanted to do with septic systems. Well, I can't do what I would like to do, assuming that the council moves forward with this plan in the future when it's presented. I need a sewer line and wastewater lines there, and so does anybody else that wants to build and have future growth for the city of Garden Ridge. And so I just wanted to, this is really more of a clarification, because I'm sure that the city council is there, and I didn't want you to be confused thinking that this person who said this, was, and I've never met this person, he's running for mayor, it's not Mayor Thompson, so I guess you all know who it is. I've never met this person, and from my understanding, he acted as if he represented me. He did not. And so I just want to make sure that you're not confused because you've listened to my plea before of the direction I want to go. So this is really just a clarification because I was not at that meeting, to make sure that the council and the mayor and any citizens that would have any concern about it know that my plans are, I desperately would like to encourage the growth of the city in a way that would be a positive thing for the city by and needing a wastewater line down FM 2252. And that's really all I want to say, and I want to thank each of you for your service. Thank you.
Sir. Next up, we have Don Hatch.
Is this on? Dawn Hatch, 8377 Twisted Oaks. Thank you for the opportunity to be on the Wildlife Commission. I'm resigning. I get rudely interrupted at every wildlife meeting. There is too much of this type of behavior, discourteous, unprofessional, spinning facts, and being disingenuous with the commission and the city council for me to want to stay. You have committees that won't work with or talk with commissions, and lots of misinformation being passed around. I was defamed and slandered at public meetings twice by a city council member with no truth to anything he said. The main volunteer with the Parks Committee, acting on behalf of the city, had the audacity to contact my employer via email under the pretense of interfering with my employment, I'm sure, telling my employer how to manage their email communications. What type of people do these kinds of things? And who in the city gave him permission to contact my employer, and why? I talked to the city and asked the city months ago about this and what's being done about his actions, and I received no answer. There is no reason and no excuse for contacting my place of employment, ever. At a wildlife meeting, a city official said there would be no trapping on private lands, yet trapping only occurred on private lands. The change of plans without notifying the public is not transparency, and this points to a troubling trend. The government of Garden Ridge has, in some cases, developed an attitude of any action they take or any action the commissions and committees take is justified as long as results the city council want are attained. I'm also resigning because I've accepted, and I'm very excited about it, a position as a volunteer coordinator for a group in San Antonio. And I've also been invited to do volunteer work with a national wildlife environmental law firm. I'll be working with professional people that have told me they respect and value my ideas, advice, and research, and where I'm able to continue giving input and supporting wildlife and the habitat. Again, thank you.
Okay, moving on, the next is the consent agenda. You had 3 items in the consent agenda. Would anyone like anything pulled from the consent agenda? Okay, absent anything being pulled, can I get a motion to approve the consent agenda?
Move to approve.
A motion from place 2. Can I get a second, please? Second. Got a motion from place, or a second from place 3. Any further discussion? All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries, and we'll move on now to item number 9. Item number 9 is personnel items, and the first one is consider the resignation of Kelly Curtright, Assistant Librarian, effective April 26th. And Linda, would you like to say a few words?
I'll just say that Kelly is leaving to begin a new adventure in homeschooling her grandchildren. Can you hear me? Oh, there it is. Kelly is leaving. She's going to be greatly missed. She is going to work on some health issues, getting healthier, but she's looking forward to her next phase of life, but we are missing her so much. Thank you.
Thank you, Linda. Yeah, we were very saddened to hear that she was going to be moving on. She's got things she's got to take care of, as Linda said. She knows that there's a spot for her in our library whenever, and we had a little going away for her already over at the library, but just wanted to make sure it was public for the council to know that we sent her off in a fine fashion, and we are going to miss her. She had a tremendous impact on the programs in the library, and I've had the pleasure to watch her in action with some of the programs over there with the kids, and she was a magician, literally sometimes and figuratively as well. But so I need to get a motion to accept her resignation.
Move to approve.
Place 2 and place 1. Any further discussion? Starting over and left.
Yes, I'd like to. I already communicated this with Linda, but I wanted to thank her again for the wonderful slide presentation that she created on behalf of Kelly. And it really showed an interesting side of Kelly, which, again, I wish I'd gotten to know her a little better while she was here.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Sir. Okay, so I have again a motion to accept the resignation from place 2, second from place 1. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? It's unanimous. Okay, moving on now to item number 10, executive session. This is pursuant Texas Government Code 551074, personnel matters, to hear a charge or complaint against Chief Eberhardt and to receive report on investigation of same. So before we go into an executive session, I'm going to explain something to council and ask council's consideration. The reason this would be an executive session is because this was an attorney-client privilege, our attorney writing to the city council as a body with the results of the investigation, disposition of the investigation and complaint. It's my desire to make this public, and what I would ask is that if the council is willing to waive attorney-client privilege, we can have this discussion in public. And I think it's appropriate to put this discussion into the public's eye and to let people know what happened and what the disposition of the investigation was. So that said, it's up to you, council, if you are willing to, as a body with a majority, to waive attorney-client privilege on the items that you have received already. So I need a motion if somebody wants to.
I'd like to just make a motion
Okay?
or a discussion.
Well, we can do a motion. You have a move?
Yes,
to-
I move that we, for the sake of transparency, that we hold this discussion in public.
Okay. I have a motion from place 5 to waive the attorney-client privilege and discuss this item in public. Can I get a second?
Second.
I think place 3 might have been first on that one. Any further discussion?
Yes,
We will have a lot of discussion about the item itself, but about the waiving attorney-client privilege. Any further discussion?
Yes, I think it's critical that this be, because I don't think it's detrimental to any of the parties involved based on what I've read and known to be true. And I think, again, for the sake of and to clear the air, essentially, I think it's important that the public know.
Yes, ma'am, thank you. Any other comments?
My only comment would be to make sure that those involved are willing to have us waive attorney-client privilege, and so I just need a nod from the chief that that's the case. Okay, thank you.
Any other discussion? Okay, so I have a motion, place 5, second, place 3. And any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, it's unanimous. So we'll move on to basically item number 11 now, which is personnel items to discuss this complaint. So the long and short of it is the city received a complaint from a citizen about some activity, alleged activity that happened in March at the First United Bank. And the complaint is there in front of you. You've received this ahead of time as well. Excuse me, the complaint, the investigation is in front of you. But what I'd like to do first is turn to our city administrator and ask her to explain when she received this complaint, what her actions.
I received a written complaint, citizen complaint, from Anthony Frasco on March 25th, 2019. The complaint alleges that Garden Ridge Police Chief Ron Eberhardt was handing out electioneering cards, soliciting votes, and money for Mayor Larry Thompson while he was on duty and in uniform. Receiving the complaint triggered Section 8 out of our personnel policy. Citizen complaints trigger investigations. In addition, what he was alleging concerning Chief Eberhardt, if it is founded, it would be a violation of the personnel policy, Section 5.11.2, political activity in general. Upon receiving the complaint, I immediately contacted our city attorney and discussed the documents I had received and how it triggered Section 8 of our personnel policy. The policy states that I, as city administrator, can form an investigation committee, and at which time I did, being those on the committee were myself, Council Member Rob Erickson, and Scott Schuhart, who is an attorney and a law enforcement officer. And then I will turn the investigation part over to Cynthia, our city attorney. Sorry.
Okay, so as Nancy stated, she did receive the complaint, at which point she turned over that information to me. As part of the regular policy and procedures as your city attorney, our firm has those particular procedures in place. And one of those procedures is that I, as the face for the firm here and the regularly assigned city attorney, am not allowed to conduct the investigation. And that's for two purposes. One is because I could potentially be a fact witness in any allegations, and two, because I'm too close in to all persons involved, there's an inherent possibility that there could be bias if I were to conduct that investigation. So of course, as Nancy mentioned, this investigation was turned over to another attorney in our firm, Scott Schuhart. Mr. Schuhart is a long-term attorney, but prior to his law career, he was actually a police officer with the city of Houston for many, many years before he transitioned over. So Mr. Schuhart is very well versed in conducting investigations, criminal and civil investigations, and for this purpose, this was a civil investigation on our part. Now, as part of that investigation, Mr. Schuhart followed the protocol, which is one, reaching out to the complainant in order to make contact with the complainant, in order to get the complainant's version of what occurred, to ensure that there is no misunderstanding between the written report provided, or the written complaint provided to the city administrator, and any of the documentations. Mr. Shearhart was unable to make contact with the complainant, and instead, Mr. David Ringel responded back to Mr. Shearhart on his behalf. We're never fully able to, according to Scott's report, we were never fully able to determine the purpose of Mr. Ringel reaching out on behalf of the complainant. However, what we will say is that because Mr. Ringel was not in a representative capacity, we did not pursue any additional conversations with Mr. Ringel on this particular matter. From there, the investigation proceeded, and Mr. Shearhart then interviewed both persons alleged to have conducted or been alleged to have been involved in misconduct according to the personnel policy, and that was Chief Eberhardt and one of the citizen on patrol, Mr. Ken Kniper. Based on the information received through those interviews, and based on the fact that the complainant failed to respond back to the investigator, and there is no evidence that the complainant actually witnessed or saw any misconduct, there is no evidence that any other persons are able to substantiate that the allegations are in fact true. The report came to the conclusion that the allegations were unfounded. They are, in fact, based on evidentiary matters, not true. So to that end, the city attorney's office has made the written report to council, and that is the report that council is waived the privilege on, and that is the background of the investigation that goes along with that. And at this particular point in time, with the finding that the allegation is unfounded and that there's no basis, no evidentiary basis to find that this claim or that these allegations are true, the city attorney's office has closed this out, and of course we're recommending that no disciplinary action be taken.
Thank you, Mr. Vino. So the long and short of this is this allegation was made to the city. The city handled it per the personnel policy, and it was determined through multiple means that it was entirely unfounded, to include the fact that the complainant was not there. And I can say that personally as well, because I was there. So this complaint was made by somebody that was not even there. The complainant had ample opportunity through multiple emails and through that phone call to speak to the investigating officer, and refused to do so. So that, in conjunction with all of the other evidence, it was found that the matters were all unfounded. The attorney that handled this, Mr. Schuhart, as you heard, has a lot of experience in these matters, both from law enforcement and from legal background, and was actually quite surprised that of this complaint, but also that he received a call from somebody that openly said they weren't officially representing the complaint, and then he didn't understand why the person was even calling. Again, wanted to bring this out in the public and wanted to let you know what happened. The first part of this, I want you to know also, is that there was a significant cost to the city. There was well over 20 hours of staff time, to include most of that being from our city administrator, to run this to ground for this complaint by somebody that wasn't even where they said that something happened. And it cost us nearly $1,500, $1,473 to be exact, in legal fees that we had to pay to do this investigation. So just wanted you to know that the results and the impact of that, the time spent, as well as the expense of such kind of complaints. So I will open it up to the floor, starting on the right side. If you have any questions for our city administrator or our city attorney. Starting on the right side.
Yeah, I read this and I got pretty upset about it because I didn't believe it at all, especially when I got to the end of it. I found out later on that Mr. Frasco was not there, and that was even more irritating. It's like, why would he do something like that? And then I started thinking about the letter, and my first impression was there was a cop involved. Not one of ours, but some kind of a policeman, because of the way, that was just an impression. So I don't know who the cop is, I can guess, but I think this is totally wrong, because Mr. Frasco's taking the heat for it, and this guy's in the background. And then I was also upset that Mr. Ringo was involved. And it seems like his name keeps popping up in the background of various things, and I could not believe that he called back and wanted to speak with Mr. Sherhart. I think some of these people just do what the heck they want to do and don't realize the ramifications. Like, Chief, this goes on his record, even though it's no big deal. There's some people who think there's a problem with it. I don't, I never did, and I really kind of resent it. As far as Ken Kniper's concerned, Ken probably volunteers more than all these other people that are involved with this combined. I mean, he's involved on a commission, he's involved Citizens Police Academy, and he volunteers for other things too. And I just cannot believe that someone would go after him like this, especially since they weren't there. I'm getting a little tired of this. I mean, last month we did the so-called Concerned Citizens of Garden Ridge. They came out with something that was like this, and seems to be a similarity between the two. And I don't like that, although the one thing I can say about Mr. Frasco is that, what's the old saying, with friends like that, who needs enemies? I just couldn't believe it. So that's all I got to say.
Mr. Mayor, remind me of our policy of what we do with this now.
It's a good question. So the investigation's finished, but because Texas law says that if a law enforcement officer has a complaint against him, it goes in his record. That's what the chief has taught me, not recently, but over the past few years. This has to go in the chief's record. And I was saving this for the end, but I'll tell you now that be thinking about this after we go through one time and everybody get the opportunity to speak. I'm going to ask council if you would consider approving a letter to be written, signed by all of council, to go in the letter, go in the chief's file along with the findings and the complaint that says that we, the council, assuming you all agree, without any shadow of a doubt, believe that this was a unfounded, false claim with no truth to it whatsoever, to again, hopefully to help in his record, because it's ridiculous and absurd that this could potentially besmirch his record for something when somebody wrote it and they weren't even there. So does that answer?
It does. Good segue. I'll write the letter and be the first one to sign it.
Very good. Thank you. Thank you. And I'll just add that we'll also involve our attorney in the writing of it, of course. Sir.
Well, you just took my talking point away. I was the one that thought about the letter to begin with. Chief, first of all, I want to apologize, not personally, but for you having to go through this. All these lies are absolutely intolerable, and if somewhere in the future we could do something about it, we definitely will. I do want a letter, if any council wants to sign this letter to go in his file to rebuke all this stuff and just tell what an outstanding contribution he is to the city of Garden Ridge and his positive impact on the city. That must go in his records also if this other crap has to go in it. That's all I have.
Thank you, sir. Sir.
I guess my question is going to go more over to Cynthia, the city attorney. We've expended a lot of time and effort last month and now this month dealing with false allegations. Is there any way we can avoid this in the future? It's very evident that this was filed falsely, very evident that the person filing it knew it was false. What then can we do? You know, I would be amenable to even trying to collect the cost of this investigation back. I don't know if that's possible, but I think that would only be fair. I mean, at what point do we shut down city business because people come in and file 50 false allegations and we got to spend the rest of our time investigating them? That's not right. That's not fair to the rest of the citizens in the city.
Go ahead, if you would answer.
So in response to your inquiry regarding recovering any cost, unfortunately, no. This is just the cost of doing business, the cost of being a governmental entity. And unfortunately for chief, this is the cost of being chief. It comes part and parcel with the territory with that. In addition to that, as your legal counsel, unfortunately, under the rules of professional conduct on my end and what I'm required to answer to the state bar, I must almost always recommend that each complaint that comes in be reviewed to determine how far it goes forward. And normally, 99 out of 10, unless, you know, we can immediately perceive any other way out, we will recommend that each complaint be taken seriously because unfortunately, there is no way to definitively weed out what could be something versus what might not be something. And so to that end, while it is an unfortunate cost of doing business, and I realize that the attorney's fees can be a real pain in the backside, to ensure the transparency of how the city is running, and especially with the police departments, we will normally err on the side of caution and say take each complaint seriously and investigate it to the full.
In fairness, I figured that was the answer, but I wanted to ask the question because it's really, you know, this is 2 months in a row now where we've had to deal with stuff that's just blatantly false. And I'm not really sure what the agenda is that people are trying to accomplish by doing this, but it's harming our city.
Thank you. Ma'am.
Yes, I'd like us to all take a deep breath and understand that this is the nature of diversity in the community. And for the sake of transparency, I concur. I was actually going to say essentially what Cynthia was going to say. We have an obligation to treat every inquiry, at least initially, just not unlike Open Records Acts. They're to be taken seriously. And yes, this was an instance where who knows the motivation. We've cleared an honest, valuable employee, but it could happen in the future that someone else is maligned, and there may be justification for it. So I think we can all agree that we all need to be open-minded about future inquiries. Hopefully there won't be any. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, so the long and short of this is very clearly this was an allegation made by an individual that wasn't even there. It very clearly has political overtones to it, but I think that there's nobody up here that would disagree with you, Councilwoman Bauer, that we must and will continue to take any complaints and allegations seriously. But one has to stop and ponder that these agendas and how much time, energy, and resources, money that we're putting towards this. And but as someone said, it's the cost of doing business, and we all understand that. So to wrap this up, first of all, yeah, Mr. Kniper, who is here, so still talking to the council though, if you get a chance, talk to him, and if you agree, give him your endorsement as well, that you know that this was a unfounded and false claim. There was no truth to it, and as well as the chief, but also we'll get that letter written, get it reviewed by our legal counsel, and we'll afford the opportunity for everybody on council to sign it, and we'll ensure that it goes into the chief's record as well. So Chief, for what it's worth, we regret that you were drugged through this for no good reason, and we appreciate the work you do, and we appreciate your patience when this investigation was going on. Does anybody have anything to add to that?
I'm going to sign above Rob's name.
Sir?
Yeah, I really appreciate everyone wanting to make this public and air it out, and I hope we can all get it gone, because we got better things to do than to mess with this. And quite frankly, now that it's in the open, I think we can go on to better things. I just hope it doesn't happen again.
Agree. So the last thing is, what I'm thinking is to put some extra oomph into the letter if we actually have a actual vote, a formal vote, to say that we accept this, that we accept it was unfounded, that we accept the findings, they were unfounded, and that we will all, Chief. Attorney, is that appropriate? Yes, sir. So I'd ask for a motion for that.
So stated.
Place 5, so stated on what I said, which is in essence that we accept that the complaint was unfounded, that it was a false claim, and that we will fix our signatures to a letter to go into the chief's file, saying as such and expressing our support for the chief. Can I get a second?
Second.
So place 5 and then place 2. Any further discussion? All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? It's unanimous. Thank you very much. Again, Chief, thank you as well. All right, moving on now to item 12, staff reports. First of all, City Administrator Monthly Activity Report. Ma'am.
The only thing that I would like to add to my report that's in the packet is results of our household hazardous waste event on April the 6th. There were 18,650 pounds of hazardous materials that were collected, 7,500 pounds of paper was shredded, and 150 pounds of prescription and non-prescription drugs were collected. And also to remind everyone, on May the 14th, we have our special city council meeting to canvass the election results. That meeting will be 6 p.m. And that's all I have, Mayor.
Okay, and thank you. I'll start over on the right side. Any questions for the City Administrator? Okay, so as promised, I'm going to pause, and we're going to, for the record, it's going to be 12A. I'm going to pause after 12A, and I'm going to go backwards on the agenda to item number 5B. And our Chief Appraiser for Comal County is here now, and we're going to invite him up. And I'll start by saying he's wearing a bulletproof vest. And he hasn't said it, but I bet he's uncomfortable that he's got his back to the audience.
Just a little.
But all joking aside, we sincerely appreciate that you're willing to come in here and explain the process, what you have for us. So thank you. So without further ado, sir, the floor is yours.
All righty. Well, let me start by just giving you an overview of the values as far as the value progression from 2015 through the present. As you can see on the chart on the top there, your values have gone, the city of Garden Ridge's values have gone from 746 million up to 906 million. So over the span of the 4 years, you're looking at about a 21.5% increase in valuations overall. Now, from last year to this year, however, from 2018 to 2019, there was approximately a 10.1% average increase with a taxable increase of only 8.1%. your taxable value only went up to 767 million in comparison to the 709 million that it was last year. But for the entire county, we sent out approximately 80,000 notices of appraised value out of the 99,000 appraised properties that we have in Comal County. And there were larger increases than what you're seeing here in Garden Ridge. The area that we actually appraised this year more stringently than any other was the Canyon Lake area, which is our reappraisal area 2, or I'm sorry, our reappraisal area 3. Garden Ridge and the city of New Braunfels is in reappraisal area 1, which will be done next year, where we'll take a closer look at our analysis to see how values along the I-35 corridor are increasing. But just to give you an idea, as far as the process, on April 1, we sent out our notices of appraised value, and we began hearing informal protests or informal conversations with taxpayers to go over the valuations. What we did was we started to show people what our sales were for those particular areas, how they compared to other properties within their neighborhood, so that they had an idea of what the comparable properties selling prices were, and then what their equity values were in comparison to their neighbors. Now, we're still doing informal hearings or informal reviews. So people are definitely encouraged to come in between now and May 15th to set up their time, or a time that's more conducive to their time, to come in and talk to our appraisers. Now, after May 15th, by the way, is the deadline to file your notice of protest. After May 15th, it's a little harder for us to try to get you in on your schedule, primarily because after May 15th, the Appraisal Review Board sets our docket. So they'll set our hearing dockets for when we will be hearing formal hearings. At that point in time, that's where we'll be limited on informals as far as having people come in. But we can still see people informally after May 15th and up to about July the 10th. Around July 10th is when the Appraisal District will be wrapping up our valuation process to get the value certified and over to the taxing jurisdictions like the city of Garden Ridge. Now, when people come in for their informal protest or their informal hearing, we would definitely recommend bring in whatever information you can, whether it be estimates, photos. If you do bring in photos, what we definitely would recommend is, if at all possible, make a drawing of your property, the footprint of your property, and mark where you're taking those photos so that we can put it into our system so we can make those adjustments. Now, again, the normal deadline for protesting is May 15th, but that doesn't mean that if you miss filing a protest on May 15th, that you're out. You can still file a protest even after May 15th. However, it's late. Once you file a late protest, the only other requirement is that you have to file a letter indicating why you are filing late. The ARB will actually review those letters and make a determination whether or not you have good cause for filing late. In most cases, the ARB will allow it, but you do have to accompany your request with a good cause letter for filing late. On May 20th of this year is when the ARB has actually slated our formal protest to begin. And we normally hear protests from 8:30 in the morning until 4:30 in the afternoon, Monday through Thursdays. They do try to set up an evening hearing or a Saturday hearing. So if someone can't make it during that time frame, you can request a different time frame to be either in the evening or on the weekend, and the ARB will try to accommodate you. Now, if you can't make it, and even on a weekend or an evening hearing, you do have other options. The taxpayer can actually file an affidavit. They can be represented by an agent, or beginning last year in 2018, they can also appear by teleconference call. So you would submit an affidavit, and you could call in for your hearing, and the ARB will take your argument along with the evidence that you've already submitted. Now, normally no later than July 20th, the Appraisal District will certify its records. Last year and the year before last, we actually certified early. In 2017, we certified on July 13th, and in 2018, we certified on July 17th. We are actually trying to certify as early as possible to give the taxing jurisdictions enough time to go through the budget process and to also adopt their tax rates. So I would not recommend anyone waiting to file a late protest as late as July 20th. I would definitely say after July 15th, even though it's late, I would definitely submit that protest so that you can still be heard. But again, after May 15th, file that letter for good cause. Now, what if somebody fails to submit their protest even after we certify? Well, from the day that we certify until January 31st of 2020, you can still file a Chapter 2525 protest. Now, that's a little more stringent. It requires a little more work on the taxpayer side, but they can still protest their valuation if it's in excess of what the proper valuation is. Or if there's a clerical error, they can still file that protest even after July 20th when we certify, and still be heard up to January 31st. Now, the ARB is trained by the Comptroller's Office for hearing purposes. So anyone that files a protest after January 1st, 2020 will not be heard until around the May timeframe of 2020, because the ARB has to be trained every year prior to hearing any protest. All righty. Well, that's about the process in a nutshell. I'd be happy to take any questions outside if y'all prefer. This way, you know, if anybody in the audience has any questions, I could probably walk through some of the items with them. Or if y'all have any questions, if the council has any questions for me, I'd be happy to try to answer anything y'all have.
I'd like to start with our council and start over left side.
Nothing I can think of, thank you.
Trying to update.
Stop it.
I looked at the growth increase since 2015, and I think I understand it. One of the concerns that I've had some citizens raise, and quite frankly, it's my concern, in some people's cases, their property value has doubled in the last 4 years. That to me strikes me as a little bit high. I'm not certain why. I'm trying to figure out how it could have doubled in 4 years. And I think that's where a lot of people are having questions, and there's a lot of people going, okay, look, you know, I bought this house in 2015 and it cost me $300,000, and now you're telling me it's $600,000. So that's where I'm kind of wondering the process, how we got to that point.
Right, and basically what the appraisal district does is we actually take a look at all sales that have already transpired. We don't try to forecast forward on a property's value. We don't try to speculate. So what we're using is we're using all the information that's within a particular market area to come up with our value for the current year. Now, all that is driven by sales. So as sales prices go up, that's basically what the appraisal district is following the market trend on the sales and increasing values in that entire market area. Now, when I talk market area, it could be, for example, the I-35 corridor, or it could be a residential neighborhood. It could be along a particular farm-to-market road. So we do try to cut up the market areas as best we can to be indicative of the same types of properties.
I think I understand.
Okay, thanks. Sir.
I wish you'd start out your conversations. I've noticed this over the years. You are required by law to produce a fair market value on the property. You don't set the tax rates. You don't collect the taxes. You have nothing to do with those entities that do set tax rates. So all you're doing is reflecting market value.
Correct.
And in fact, they have gone up, 8 to 10% in the last 4 or 5 years. As far as doubling, there could have been an error probably some time in the past that maybe they've corrected or something like that. I do know that they've gone up quite a bit. But as an appraiser, I have never challenged the appraisal on my house because it's always been undervalued, and I know that because I'm an appraiser, so I've never had to come in for y'all. So you all do a good job, and I know you're working on other things other than just residential too.
Yes, sir. Yes,
Thanks.
sir.
Thank you. Go ahead.
I appreciate your time tonight and coming in, so thank you.
Surely.
Sir.
Yeah, I got a quick question. You mentioned you were going over District 3, and you'll be going over District 1 next year. When you say you're doing that, What exactly does that entail?
So what we do when we do our reappraisal for each of the different districts is we will actually do a aerial flight, a high-resolution imagery aerial flight. It's a digital image which basically compares what the image was in the past in comparison to the image that's taken at that point in time. So as an example, in District 2, the Canyon Lake area, or I'm sorry, District 3, the Canyon Lake area, it basically takes a look at what was out there as far as structures on the ground during the last flight and compares it to our current flight that was done in November of 2018. Okay, and since it's a digital smart image, it shows us every structure that's either been modified or is new to that property. So we can actually pick those up a lot faster now than what we did in the past. The great thing about the digital imagery is that when the flights are taken, we set out monument points, basically points on the ground that have very specific GPS coordinates so that we can actually take measurements off of the imagery. And the imagery is not just a straight ortho or straight down look, it's also oblique or at a 30 to 45 degree angle. And the images that are taken from the drone plane at all angles, from 8 different angles. So it's taking it straight from the sides, front and back, and then at 45 degree angles from each of those other angles. So it takes 8 pictures at one time as it's flying. So we can get a complete 360 degree view all the way around the house at an angle and also straight down. Now, since it is infrared imagery or IR imagery, even if there's a tree canopy, because the temperature of a roof is different from vegetation, we can actually see the outline of the structure as well. So that's the first part. The second part is we run we will run our own internal ratio study to begin our analysis of what the market has done from one year to the next. And we divide it up into market areas, like I mentioned before. Now, what we will do every year is we will review those market areas to make sure that those market areas haven't either changed shape or expanded or gotten smaller, or more additional market areas have been created within one market area. We will then take a look at all the properties within those market areas to make sure that they're consistent or equal as far as construction types, valuations, depreciation. We will also take a look at, for example, our topology maps to make sure that if there's any drainage issues that may be occurring, we take that into account or try to factor that in as we're looking at the properties. We also do take a look at, for example, the traffic counts, also crime ratings within different areas, also types of, for example, sex offenders within the areas, to see how that's going to affect valuations. We try to take a look at as many different factors as we can to try and delineate the different market areas or the different adjustments that are caused by the different factors. Now, one of the things that the appraisal district does have to do is, before we can apply an adjustment, just blanket adjustment to everybody, we have to be able to demonstrate by data that adjustment is justified. For example, if we see within one particular area that there's a drainage slough and those houses are being flooded whenever there's a hard rain, we will compare the sales prices of those properties in comparison to other properties that are not inside that drainage slough. That difference can actually be calculated, and we can say, okay, that's the adjustment that we're going to apply for this type of a factor or this type of an issue. So in most cases, we're able to develop those factors from other properties that we've already appraised, not just in the Garden Ridge area, but throughout the Comal County area. So that helps us make those adjustments in other areas where we don't have enough sales to create an adjustment.
One last thing. So you'll be doing District 1, which is us in New Braunfels, next year. In the meantime, I'm assuming you may have done comparables around Brian's house. They were selling for less than they should?
Yes. Actually, what we'll try to do is, within all areas, whether we go in and do a stringent reappraisal, we will actually run an analysis of all the market areas just to see how our ratios are coming out, our internal ratios. And we will normally run about between 7 to 9 internal ratios per year, because we're testing different factors to see what the proper adjustments would be from one year to the next. Surely.
And any reattacks coming back the other way?
Just out of curiosity, sir, so when you do your aerial infrared mapping, you do that with drones, or you hire a pilot, or what do you do?
Both.
Okay.
We do some flights with pilots and then also with drones.
Thanks.
I want to tell everybody that Mr. Lozano has brought aspects to the Comal County appraisal district that I literally have never heard from before. He come from a smaller appraisal district down in southeast Texas, and where he got the knowledge and ability to bring to us is incredible. You have done some amazing things that most counties that are twice our size in population don't even haven't got to that level yet.
Thank you.
So it's pretty impressive.
Thank you.
Thanks. Anything else over here? So, again, thank you, but a couple of things. Talked about the timeline, big thing, May 15th. You can do the protest. There's a lot of talk out there about how to do the protest. In 30 seconds or less, if I came to you and I said, give me some advice on how to do a protest, what would you say?
Well, first thing I would do is, I would say, if you're wondering whether you should protest or not, definitely file the protest. Because from our side, it's a lot easier to withdraw your protest than to file a protest late. Okay, so that would be the first hint that I would give you. The second hint would be, on the protest form, if you received a notice of appraised value in the mail, you received a pre-populated protest form on the back. Normally, most people will file a protest under market value, equity, and I would also recommend incorrect description or property description and other. This way, it covers everything. The only other items that you might want to protest is if your exemption is not correct, or if it's not even showing up on your notice of appraised value. You would probably want to check off the exemption protest, but other than that, I would definitely check those 4 items: market, equity, other, and property description. Because this way, with property description, if it's a square footage issue, you've got it covered under there. And other is basically just about anything else under the sun that the ARB actually has authority over.
Okay. Great. And so can you tell us for 2018 and 2019, what was the average for Garden Ridge, the increase?
The average taxable increase was about 8%. The average market increase was about 10%.
And people that have homestead here are protected to 10%, right?
Correct. Your taxable value or your assessed value is capped at 10% per year. So if our value jumps up, as an example, if in 2018, your value was $100,000 and all of a sudden it doubles to $200,000, your value will only go up 10% from the taxable value of $100,000 in 2019. In 2020, it'll go up 10% from the $110,000, so it'll jump up to $121,000, even though your value is still at $200,000.
Gotcha. So if, you can look at the letter, you can go online, but just straight from the horse's mouth, if somebody's got a question about this, what do you recommend is the quickest way for them to get an answer?
Probably calling or coming in. That would probably be the quickest way to get an answer. If you're there in New Braunfels, then I definitely say, come on in so you can see exactly what we've got as far as our equity and our sales charts. But if you're out and about, or if you're an absentee owner, definitely call in and we could probably help you over the phone. It's a little harder because you can't see what we're looking at, but we can definitely send you the information so you can take a look at it.
Absolutely. Well, thank you. Thankless, I can sympathize with that. Definitely a thankless job in most cases, but we thank you and appreciate the rigor that you bring to the process. Don't necessarily appreciate it. I would appreciate it if you devalued my house by about 50%, if you work on that. But, yeah, exactly. I don't intend to sell it. But nevertheless, we appreciate you coming in here, appreciate what you've done with your staff to ensure that the process is professional, is open, transparent, and I've heard nothing but good things when people are interacting with y'all. I mean, you know, they're going with problems, they're not happy that they're talking to you to begin with, but there's no complaints about when they are talking to your folks, so
That's great
I
to
appreciate
hear.
that as well.
And just so y'all know, we are available for any other public speakings. We have been doing some presentations to homeowners associations as far as the protest process and exactly what to do on the protest forms and what to bring in. So we're very open to do that at any point in time, except for on Sundays. But just about any other time, whether it be in the mornings, afternoons, or even in the evenings, we're happy to put on a little seminar or presentation.
And again, if somebody wants to contact you and ask for that kind of thing, just call the office.
Yes, sir,
Uh,
or
the
they
num-
can email us at our public website. I brought some cards with me, so if somebody wants to email me directly, they're more than welcome to, and we can set up a presentation for them.
We'll make sure we put those at the back table at the end.
Very good.
Any other questions or comments? Again, thank you very much for your time, and we really, really appreciate you coming in.
Not a problem, thank you all.
Take care. Okay, everyone, so now we're going to pick up on item 12B. So for those of you that are keeping track, we finished with A, we're now going to go to 12B, staff reports, Police Department. Chief?
Yes, sir. Well, that's kind of scary, though, because everybody accuses the PD of having drones, and we don't, and they've got drones that are taking infrared of everybody's house. It's not us. You have everything pretty much here on this. I would like to mention a couple of things. Under training, we had a lot of training last month. A lot of that was our new officer, Patrick, getting caught up on things that he's missed over the last year that he was not afforded the opportunity at his old department. And also, the bigger one is the Narcan training you see there. So our officers now have kits in all of our cars. Should one of them get exposed to fentanyl that's absorbed through the skin, we now have the Narcan kits to counteract that. They all receive that training, and those Narcan kits were paid for by the Citizens Police Alumni, the GRCPAA. So they footed the bill for all of those kits and boxes and to go into the car, so we appreciate that a lot. We've made a little bit of progress on the school traffic also. They're starting to see the signs. We had an officer out there for 2 weeks, getting them into two lines and then trying to get them to merge back in at the top, and now they're starting to do it on their own. That's good. Unfortunately, they're starting to do it down too far, and now they're blocking the entrance to City Hall again, so we're working on it. It's a slow process, and we're working on it. We did get the issue with the buses running the stop sign fixed, so they're all stopping at where they're supposed to now, so that's a good thing. And other than that, we do have our Pizza with the Police coming next week here in the council chambers, so if anybody's available on the 7th of May, 6 o'clock, come on out and have pizza with us. And on a closing note, I'm sorry that the taxpayers had to pay for that malicious attack on me at their expense.
Thank you, Chief. Starting over on the left side, comments, questions for the chief?
No, sir. Will you?
I'm not ordering the pizza, so I cannot confirm nor deny that.
My Hawaiian wife would strangle you about Hawaiian pizza.
I will say that pineapple has no place on a pizza,
That's right.
but that's my personal opinion.
agree.
I didn't ask for your personal opinion.
Good.
My only comment is, Chief, keep up the good work.
Thank you.
What time is the pizza thing?
6 o'clock.
What?
6 o'clock.
In the evening?
Yes, sir.
Oh, we can bring beer.
1800,
Okay, good.
sorry.
I didn't want it in the
6
morning.
a.m.
I'll say.
Sir?
Thanks for what you and the entire department do for us, Chief.
Our pleasure.
Sir. Mike?
Ditto, Rob.
All right, thank you, Chief. Moving on to item 12C, Public Works. Mr. Steinmetz, floor is yours.
Good evening. On April 25th of this month, we had TCEQ come out to give us a stormwater site assessment. This is what they do every 5 years to gather information to find out how we're doing on our measurable goals and to go over our monthly reports like construction, public outreach, like pamphlets and whatnot. They will contact us later on this month with an exit interview detailing our strengths and maybe even things that we need to improve on for the next MS4 permit time. Paul Davis Park, we had a tree removed.
So how do we do?
Not sure yet.
Okay.
They'll give us a letter, probably about 2 weeks with their assessment. Then
Thank
we'll move forward from there.
Go ahead, thanks.
Paul Davis Park, we had a dead tree removed that was pretty close to an oak tree next to the playground. Kind of looked like it might have been a hazard in case limbs might have fell or it might have damaged the playground over there. We're also considering removing another tree that's dead that's next to a residence house on our side of the park that could possibly cause some property damage if we ever had some high winds and whatnot. We also added some temporary boulders next to the parking lot at Paul Davis Park, so to prevent anybody from parking on the grass and rutting it up. We have some, we're going to put up some bigger boulders with some decorative limestone cut blocks for basically people could sit on also as an extra instead of a bench, have a two-phase results. We are also monitoring an oak tree next to the older playground. It's starting to show symptoms of some stress. Found some odd-looking leaves that were kind of concerning. It's a tree that's previously been treated before, after that first case we found a couple years back in the park. Contacted Mr. Edmondson with the Texas Forestry Service, and he's basically said, we could retreat it if we want to. That's totally up to us. He's more concerned with trees on outside of the trench that we did. Just for the record, the outside trees are looking pretty good. So it's basically our call if we want to treat the trees that were previously treated. They had when they were treated, they had probably about a 70–80% chance of survival in that. From what I understand, once they start showing signs of any type of distress or oak wilt, that chance gets decreased pretty good. So, like I said, up to us if we wanted to retreat that or not. In animal services, we have 4 more dogs and 6 cats, and one of our previous dog's cat has been adopted. And that's all I have to report.
And
Any questions?
everybody take a good look. Anybody's got any room or knows anybody? 4 really cute dogs that are looking for a home. Starting over on the right side, questions, comments for Public Works? Sir.
John, do you have a dog at your house? I think you're the only one here that doesn't.
Matter of fact, there was one there about 5 days ago. I think it went back to its own yard, though. Seriously.
I probably won't say again that the mayor remains with 1 dog in his home. But-
And as of
but-
6 weeks and
4
1
hours-
hour
4 hours and
ago,
1 day.
6 weeks and 1 hour ago, we also have a newborn in the house, so
I
we're
realize
doing
that.
just fine, thank you.
I realize that. The important thing is that Lucy stays.
Yes.
Okay. I would just like to thank Stephen. He actually was responding to some concerns that I expressed about that parking on the grass, because the park is just becoming more and more popular all the time, and the wonderful weather we've had recently. I went by the park several times when people were just, for lack of parking facilities, parking just kind of anywhere. In one case, there was a white SUV parked close to a tree that I'm sort of attached to, that I don't even know how they got out of the car, because it was parked so close to that tree. And so in the interim, rather than before we were able to do the bench arrangement that Stephen has mentioned, he put those temporary boulders there to keep people from going up on the yard and, I'm sorry, on the grass and so on. And also, do you have, I know you and I talked about estimates for the cost of retreating that tree versus taking it out entirely. I don't know if it's cost effective to treat it. It'd be great if we can save it, but as you know, the limbs are already over there are some hazardous limbs over the old playground as well.
I'd have to go back and check to find out what the price was, but I believe it was like $9 per diameter inch of the
Right.
tree, which that particular tree, that'd probably be like $250 to treat it again. And
Okay.
to take it down totally would be probably about $15,000 to $2,000
Mm-hmm.
because
Okay.
of a rather big tree.
Right. Okay, thank you.
So we all know that Public Works does a fantastic job taking care of our facilities, our buildings, and the systems in the building. So I'm assuming that the reason it's so hot in here is somebody's paying you to make it hot, so we make this meeting shorter, and it isn't going to work. So give them their money back, and would you please make this room cooler? Thank you. Next up is water, item 12D.
Thank you. We had,
Welcome to our new water manager.
thank you, I appreciate it, thanks for having me. We had some use in our Edwards, we're still using a lot more of the Edwards, and less on the Trinity. We have still a lot of acre foot left, so we're gonna use that as much as we can. The water quality's good, all the reports have been in, and we have some projects that I wanna mention. So we're using that field force management. It's for the tablet for the guys, and it's, we're getting into it. And anytime you get into something like that, it takes time in order to work out some of those bugs. So we're doing that now presently. We're also going to do a water audit or an audit on the water system. And I'm going to go through systematically, site by site, and just kind of audit everything and find out where we are and then where we want to go. And then also with the SCADA, we're looking at the SCADA system very critically to find out where our weaknesses are and then where we can improve those. And with that, thank you. If you have any questions,
Starting on
Mayor.
the right side, questions for our water manager.
Yeah, back on those tests that we took, there was a raw test, chlorine test, and whatever that first one was, bacteriological. You showed that we passed. How much did we pass? What are the various requirements, like chlorine? We passed. What is considered passing, and what did we have?
Yes, sir. So the three areas, the vector, so the first two are a pass-fail. You either pass it or fail it. You either have something in your water that it's not supposed to be there, or you don't. Did it go off? Did the speaker go off? Hello, check? Okay. And then the chlorine residual test, we just have to make sure that we have a chlorine residual that doesn't pass below. So the state requires that we stay above a 0.2 chlorine residual for free chlorine, and we're doing that. And so we made sure every day that we make a test, and that's why there's 30 tests, because there's 30 days in the month.
Well, Ms. Parsons, thank you for all the diving into all these different things. We're in great hands. You have a great team, as you discovered, and we look forward to hearing more of what you're finding as you're doing some of these audits, and ensuring that we have, every time we turn that tap, we have the clean, safe water that everybody doesn't even think twice about. So, thank you very much.
Thank you, sir.
Next up is library. Ms. Crossell.
Good evening. I told you last month that when I filled out my accreditation report for teens activities, I always had to put 0. So now, as of now, we have 2 for the year. And we've got some wonderful young people here who are going to tell you a little bit about the Teen Advisory Board. We have Aurora Fox, I think you all know her, and Michael Ruffalo. They're going to tell you about themselves.
Good evening. I am Aurora Fox, President of the Teen Advisory Board.
Hello, my name is Michael Ruffalo. I am the Vice President of the Teen Advisory Board.
So, the Garden Ridge Teen Advisory Board is a group of dedicated high school students who are interested in making a difference in our library. TAB, or Teen Advisory Board, members play a critical role in developing the library's young adult collection, young adult outreach, event planning, and marketing, and making the library a friendlier place for young adults. Our mission of the Garden Ridge Library Teen Advisory Board is to give young adults to our community an opportunity to be involved in the library. Through ideas, volunteering, or participation, teens should feel like they are making a difference in our library and community. TAB is able to reach out to the teen community by providing events and programs that interest them and give them a new perspective of the library to young adults. We promote working in groups kindly and efficiently to achieve our mission.
Hi, I will take the membership and activities part. So for membership, TAB meetings are held once a month for around 2 hours. As we all know, meetings vary in length greatly. So members will earn community service credits for volunteering at events and attending meetings. So to be a member on the Teen Advisory Board, there are some requirements. Members have to be a high school student or 8th grader. We do want teens. They have to be a teen. Members should be willing to commit 2 hours a month, 2 hours once a month for meetings. Members need to enjoy working with others in a team. We want to be working efficiently. We want to have our meetings run well. Members must be interested in the library and improving library services for teens. Like Ms. Linda said, we want to have good teen activities so we can get that number higher. And members must attend at least 5 teen advisory programs yearly. And they must keep in good standing with the library, so that means no library fees over $5. You've got to return your books on time. So some activities we have planned for the Teen Advisory Board include game nights, board games, digital games, card games, snacks. Movie nights, got to have some popcorn with movie nights. Summer crafts, jewelry making, art, etc. And we're interested in having some various speakers who can lecture about how to prepare for college, SAT, ACT, etc. Very important things. And one event that we're going to do that's coming up very soon is we're going to have some of our members man a recruiting and information booth for the Teen Advisory Board in front of the library on May 11th during the farmers market.
That's great.
We need to get more people. We thank you for your support thus far, and we look to the future for support. Is there any questions?
Yes, we're going to give an opportunity for everybody to speak, but that was great. You all did great. Start over on the left side. Don't forget your mics. Go ahead.
I think it's a great initiative, and I'm pretty sure I know where I can come up with at least one more teenager.
Thank you. We really appreciate that.
He usually has him cutting wood by hand. How many people do you have in your group?
We Yeah, 6.
Just 2 right now. You spoke well for all of you.
Awesome job. I got 2 more teenagers coming your way at your booth at the Farmers Market on Saturday, May 11th, right, from 9 to 1 p.m. Thanks for what you're doing. Thanks for volunteering. I think we got a couple of future council members or mayors or senators, whatever, on our hands here. Thanks for what you're doing.
Thank you
Proud
very
of
much.
Go Canyon? Uh-oh.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
At least one. Okay. Not Canyon?
Homeschooled.
Okay. Go homeschool. Go Canyon.
Yeah, y'all, great job. You're representing the group and coming up here. You know, I know that you prepared for this and you did very well. And this is really exciting. The Teen Advisory Board, spending the time to come up with those guidelines, they're great guidelines. You know, and I defy anybody up here to have anything that would be more comprehensive, more reasonable, to have a great teen advisory board. So well done with that. This is really exciting. And I've spoken with our city administrator and with our librarian, and one of the activities that you want to do is movie night. And I offered up that you could do movie night in here, because those screens are high definition projectors and screens. You have the ability to tap into a Fire Stick or a Netflix account or something like that to watch movies. The only proviso is you can't mess around with anything up here, and if you make a mess, you got to clean it up. And Linda says she'll make sure we have some enforcers for that. And we'll look for other ways that we can provide resources and facilities, because this is fantastic. I'm personally am very excited about what you're doing, and I thank you for putting the time and the thought into this. Good job.
Thank you.
Thanks. Ms. Crossland, you have anything else? No, that's all. Anything else for the library? Okay.
I'll underwrite the popcorn for the first year.
There you go. You got popcorn. Did you hear what she said? The first year. Popcorn for a year. All right. That's awesome. Thanks. Okay, that concludes item 12. Item 13, city engineer. Mr. Mummert, the floor is yours.
Good evening. Just a few items here, so I'm going to go through the entire list, and then if there are questions, I'll be happy to answer them at the end. Regarding the 2015 CIP project, the contractor's been out. They finished the crack sealing, except for one area. I've contacted them about coming back out to do that small area. Otherwise, they've done a really good job. Didn't have any of the recurring issues that we had with the last set of repairs. Pleased with the work that they've done, though we're just about ready to wrap that one up completely.
Great.
The 2252 sewer project, continuing discussions with neighbors, looking at some alternatives. There have been questions back and forth right now. Responded to a few questions and waiting for some responses, so nothing more to add from that standpoint. Regarding the Creekview drainage and the NEBC, Northeast Bible Church, at the April 7th Planning and Zoning Commission, they had presented their special use permit. During that public hearing, there was discussion, questions from the public. So Ms. Kane and I met with representatives from the church and from their engineer, came up with addressed some of the questions they had, and then they're currently working on responses to some of the questions and concerns that were raised during that meeting, and they'll be bringing those back at the next P&Z meeting. Moving on to Sumac Circle, Mr. Steinmetz is working on obtaining bids for the fence along the easement. Once we've got the fence bids, then we'll clear along the easement, clear the trees and vegetation to install the fence. Based on our discussions, we're looking at that probably in the next couple of weeks, being able to get started on that. And then lastly, Binzel Lane, been trying to get this one started. Weather's not been in our favor, and the contractor's been careful as far as starting here, just because of it being a detention pond outfall and drainage. We really don't want to disturb it when we know it's going to be we're expecting heavy rain. Additionally, the property owner, where we're crossing his driveway, had some activities going on, and we're trying not to disrupt that. So hopefully this week yet, we can get started and get that project moving forward. And then lastly, as far as the discussions with Selma regarding CCN, they're ongoing. We've got some additional approaches that we're looking at as far as the CCN is concerned, but nothing specifically to add there. So be happy to take any questions.
One thing I'd like to add is subtlety, something you said about the Beinsel Lane, is one of the delays was just flat out respecting the fact that a resident that would be impacted by the work had something going on, and we wanted to make sure that we didn't, there was no reason for us to not delay to respect that he had something going on, and I appreciate that you made sure that happened, so thank you. Good. Starting on the right side, questions, comments for our engineer? Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Next is item 14, City Commission Committee Reports, Recommendations, Possible Actions, starting with item A, Planning and Zoning. Had a couple of meetings since the last time we met. Floor is yours, sir. Dr. Miller?
Yes, sir. Can you hear me?
What?
Okay. Can you hear me?
Keep the mic close, please.
Keep it close? Okay, I got it.
You're soft-spoken, so we want to make sure everybody hears you.
My grandkids don't think so. Planning and zoning, we had 2 meetings since the last city council meeting. Going by the agenda, we considered a petition from Mr. Aguayo for installation of a amateur communications tower or antenna. After looking at all the information that Mr. Aguayo presented and having a public hearing, our recommendation to City Council was to not approve the installation of this tower. The problems we had with it basically related to the height of the tower. There's one of the stipulations in the special use permit, special regulations, section 9, 9.1.5.3. The tower shall be located no closer than twice the height of the tower to any adjoining property line unless a worst-case failure analysis demonstrates a lesser distance to be saved. The height of this tower, fully extended, would be about 90 feet, and the closest property line was 75 feet. So that was the basis for us turning it down the first time. Now, subsequent to that, I guess there have been some revisions of the original site plan, if you would, and we didn't have access to that revision at the time we made our decision. I don't know if it made much of a decision that made much difference one way or the other. The second thing, in the public hearing came out, quite a few neighbors spoke up, at least a half a dozen or more, spoke up against the antenna. They were concerned with the radio bandwidth and the interference with the Wi-Fi, television, radio, and everything else in their homes. They claim that it's already happening without the antenna being installed. He's lived there about a year and a half, has had a amateur license, radio license for, I think, 37 years. But even without this antenna, he had a good plan for. It was already interference with their communications. And the third thing was the, as you can imagine from the neighbors, was the aesthetics of a 33-foot tower being in their neighborhood. Even though I don't live there, and I don't know how obtrusive it would be, but we have to respect that. Anyway, we had an unanimous decision on planning and zoning to turn down the request. I'm not sure if Mr. Aguayo is here this evening to present his case to the city council.
Is the petitioner here? Somebody's pointing, but I don't see. He is here. Okay, well, and we're going to have a public hearing, Sir, when Planning and Zoning Commission Chair is finished presenting, we're going to open up a public hearing. He can't hear is what you're telling me? Okay, well, then we'll have to make sure he hears. Go tell him. But do you have any other evidence before I open up the public hearing?
No, sir.
Okay, so, so item number 14A1, 11 is a recommendation, unanimous recommendation to deny this, this petition. So 1.2 is to hold a public hearing to receive comments. I'm going to open up the public hearing at 7:42 PM. And I'll invite anyone from the public to include the petitioner to come up and speak. Would anyone like to speak on this subject?
It's an amateur radio, and a ham, I think it's a ham radio.
And when you come up to speak, if you would, name, address, and then afterwards, if you would go over to where the city secretary is and give that information so she'll
Hi.
make sure she gets it right. So welcome.
I live at 20839 FM 3009, across the street. When we first got the letter of this, antenna, Dr. Miller was correct. There was a question of 35 feet. When I went to your regulations, it can only be 12 feet above a roof line. And he has a single story, so any antenna, any pole mast from section 9 of your ordinance says it cannot be more than 12 feet high. The other thing is, there has been problems with our radio bandwidth. I've called AT&T. Since we moved here in 2014, they did an audit on our house. They encouraged us to do digital telephone, and since 8 months since he moved here, I had AT&T come and do an audit in March, and then they just came in April, and they had to adjust my megahertz of some sort because I back up to this property. I was told by the FCC today that I would have to file a complaint, and the neighbors around us to file a complaint because of the bandwidth that is being used by him that we should be using. It knocks us off our internet service, and if you have digital phone, it knocks out your phone line too. My question is, does the city, since the radiation of it, the radius of it, is it also affecting the police bandwidth too? I don't know. Check 8 months from now and see if you've been having problems with it.
Gotcha.
Because you could be having problems with that, because it doesn't just go one little area. It's a big area that we don't know the transmission of his material or his equipment. The bigger it gets, the more radius of the interference will go. And
Yes,
those are
ma'am.
my concerns. I did do a lot of pros and cons. The FCC sometimes help them better than the neighbors, which if y'all give this variance, then there's only so much recourse we can do. My suggestion is don't let it happen, because then the recourse is later. If he adds more transmitters, more equipment, there will be problems. Okay?
Okay, so
Thank
hang
you.
on, I want to see if anybody has any questions for you, ma'am.
Oh.
Starting over on the left side, any questions for?
No, I think it was well-researched.
Anything?
I have no questions, sir.
Sir?
I only have one question. It's not necessarily for you. I'm wondering if there is a bandwidth which he could use that would not interfere with A, police, B, the neighbors. That's just a rhetorical question. Maybe he can check it out and take some research on his part and get back with me.
Well, I talked to the FCC. They told me that taking the bandwidth is stealing, and I would have to file a report with the police. Then they would send an FCC person. It would take 6 to 9 months for them to come. If more people complain, they will address it sooner. So that's my recourse. It is considered hacking and stealing. So I would have to go through the city to make a complaint and all these things. And AT&T, this is awful to say. I have complained so much to AT&T about my service that I have the personal telephone number to Randall Stevenson. He is the AT&T CEO. So when I call him and I ask him, please do an audit for my bandwidth, I know I can get it done. I don't want to call that card in until I have to, but I will. Thank you.
Okay. Any other questions for this person? Okay, the public hearing's still open. Does anybody else have anything? Please. And while you're coming up, I just want to, this is a little bit irregular, but from what I understand, the petitioner was here. He couldn't hear what was going on, and so I'm going to put our city secretary on the spot who went over and talked to him. Can you tell us how that went?
Yes. So he is hard of hearing, and I asked him if he wanted to speak to the council after the public hearing, and he said that he did not want to speak in public. He wanted to talk to somebody individually in private, and he said that he would be sending an email and appealing anything that was said.
Okay. Thank you, Ms. Spencer. Sir, go ahead.
Sure. Tom Nelson, 9433 Bluebell. And a little background about neighborhoods and ham radio operators. Before I lived here in Garden Ridge, I sold a house out in West Texas. And a few years later, I was in the town and stopped by to see the old house and neighbors. And as I drove to the area, I could see a big ham antenna in what used to be my old backyard. And you could see it from about a block away. And when I stopped to talk to some of my old neighbors, I said, how do you like the people in the house? And they go, they're fine, and we like them, they get along fine. But they said, we don't particularly like the visual of the antenna. And we really don't like when he's broadcasting because it affects so much of the electrics in our house. At which point, I decided to stop the discussion because I didn't go any farther hacking off my old neighbors. I didn't live there anymore, but I could tell they were upset by the interference they had. Now, as far as interference, ham radio operators and all amateurs are all at different frequencies. We know this. But there's getting to be so much in the air. I can give you an example of how things have changed. I've lived here 40 years, and at 35 years, I could always run an antenna in the attic of my garage, and that's how I got television. And about 3 to 4 years ago, I was getting so much pixelation. Now we're on digital TV, of course. Analog was fine, and the digital was fine for a while, but I got more and more pixelation. And eventually I had to go to cable. And of course, like everybody else now, it's another $1,100 a year, but I've got good TV, relatively good. And when I was talking to the broadcast engineers down at Brownig Lake, they pointed out, remember, as the signals that are coming to you that came pretty easily, say 30 years ago, now they're competing with Wi-Fi, GPS, of course, AM, FM, TV, baby monitors, all the tablets, cell phones, all of this interference in the air to the point where some of these TV signals were just getting bombarded with everything else and pixelating. And many times it was right when you were trying to hear something or the crux of the show was about to happen and it would pixelate and then it would come back. And of course then I got rid of it by having to go to the cable. And it works, but it's another $1,100 a year that I didn't have to pay for about 35 years. So there is interference out there. And it's something we have to take care of and think about. Some of my neighbors, including me, have had odd circumstances with television and telephone in the last 6 months. We know that he's been broadcasting temporarily, he said at the meeting, for the last 8 months. So you go, coincidence? Okay. So I think if the city does approve it, I think you really need to think about recourse. If all of a sudden this goes through and we start having interference, I know nobody wants to go to the attorneys and start paying attorney fees. If by chance it is approved, what's the city's recourse to say, okay, uncle, we gave it a try and you're messing with everybody electronically, shut it off. In other words, start it up, but we got a way to stop it without a big fight and something grandfathered or a whole bunch of attorney fees. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Anyone else?
Sir.
Welcome.
Hi, my name is Juan Trevino. I live at 20810 Timber Rose. I live adjacent to Mr. Aguayo's residence. I want to say early last month, he had the antenna extended above the, extended out, and had to be about 45 feet up in the air. And you could actually clearly see it visibly from the road. It is an eyesore if you're passing through the neighborhood. As Mr. Nelson had said, I've already started experiencing electronic difficulties on my phone and TV. I want to say just this past Sunday, probably around 6 o'clock, I had a freeze frame on the TV where basically it was just garbled. I called, initially I called my provider, AT&T, to see if they can ping it. And they said that there was nothing wrong with their lines. And so I had to have assumed that the interruption was coming from another source. I took a measurement of my residence. My residence has a mansard roof, which is a kind of an extended roof on top of the old roof. With that in itself, it extends to about 28 feet. Another 12 foot above that, of course, would put it at, what did I say, 28, 12? I'm sorry, no, I'm sorry. It goes up to about 20 feet, and above that is 32 feet. So his antenna, and actually will definitely exceed the limitations of what's in the ordinance. So therefore, I'm against the installation of this antenna in our neighborhood. Thank you.
Thanks, sir. Anyone else?
My name is Bob Crawford. I live at 9507 Gloxinia, which is on the back side. And I have had, you wouldn't believe, pixelation of my TV signal, Wi-Fi problems. I too have a personal account person to help me resolve it through Dish Network. And we've not been able to figure out what's going on, which makes me wonder if maybe this is part of what's going on with my TV signal. So I just wanted to add that to that. Thank you.
Thanks, sir. Anyone else? Okay, didn't look like anyone else. I'm going to start over on the right side before I close the public hearing and see if any of the council has any questions for any of the people that have spoken. I just figured I'd do it all at once. Sir.
For those that have spoken, thank you for coming to the meeting and hanging out and being willing to come up and address it in the public hearing. We greatly appreciate that. Thanks.
Sure.
I'd like to say the same thing. It's not very often we have somebody in a public hearing actually show up with input that we can make decisions. We appreciate it very much.
Sure. Ma'am.
Ditto to that, but also the fact that several of these people who've spoken have been here quite a long time. I don't know that we've seen you here a whole lot, so please keep coming. Thank you.
Okay, so one more time, anybody else for the public hearing? I'm going to close the public hearing at 7:55. And as I close it, I'm going to echo council and say that absolutely appreciate you taking the time to come out to give us your opinion. You know, the idea here is the people that are sitting up here are not just doing it on what they think and their whims, they're doing it on what they hear from citizens, and often we don't hear. So appreciate very much that you came in, that you brought in your experience, your evidence, and gives this council the ability to step into the next item on the agenda with a little bit more information. So thank you. So now that is item 14A 1.3, which is to take action on the petition. Again, the petition is to have this variance for this tower, and we'll take a motion to accept the recommendation and move forward with a denial, or to not accept the recommendation and move forward with a variance. Anyone?
I move to accept the planning and zoning recommendation to deny the installation.
Okay, I have a motion from place 5 to deny the installation, accept the recommendation by planning and zoning. Can I get a second?
Second.
I have place 3 with a second. Any further discussion or questions over here?
Yes. Dr. Miller, do you happen to know, given my propensity for considering structures, again, the petitioner's gone now, so I know that backyard used to have a number of structures.
Other
So-
structures, yeah.
Yeah, and I'm wondering if in fact this even would exceed the proper number of structures, but he's not here to ask, so.
I don't think we looked at it from that aspect, to be truthful with you. We were focused more on the aesthetics and construction and the ordinance that was in violation. We can look at the rest of the structures, to be truthful with you.
Sure. Just wondered if it came up. Thank you.
Sir?
I'm more curious about finding out if the interference problems can be dealt with. That's outside of this, but obviously it becomes an issue. It's going to be an issue we're probably going to have to face as a city and as a nation, quite frankly, as all of our bandwidths fill up.
Anything else? Sir?
That kind of like along the same thing I was thinking. If we have a problem now and he doesn't even have any antenna up, what are we going to do what can we do to possibly solve that? It can't continue, I wouldn't think, so we have to look into that in the future, I guess.
Point of clarification, if I could.
Go right answer.
Apparently, the gentleman had a temporary tower up at some time, okay, before it was reported by some of his neighbors. And at that time, I think he applied for the special use permit. So there was a tower there. How long, I do not know, but he was instructed to take it down by the city and apply for the special use permit. So
Okay,
it
so
may-
we don't,
it may
we
be
don't have an
remanded.
ongoing problem right now. It corrected itself.
that I'm aware of.
Okay, thanks, Doctor.
Thanks, sir. Sir?
Yeah, I've got, I would like to see if there's any way he could get a new bandwidth. I don't know this much about it, but if there's some way he could have his CB. My wife's father was a ham radio operator, and he was picking up people from all over the world. As a matter of fact, the ham radio operators were they're basically the first people to report if there's a disaster somewhere or something like that, like the earthquake in Chile about 20 years ago. The outside world, the only way they knew about it for days was through a ham radio operator. And, I'd love to see this up, but not the way it's really affecting the neighbors. If there's some way, something he could do, if it would still work at a lower height and a different bandwidth, I would love to see him come back. But someone would have to talk to him and, I don't know what he can do. But I just don't like to see it affecting so many people in such a negative way.
Thank you. Okay, so and actually, I'd like to say something because, good on you. You mentioned something that is a point that a lot of people may not be aware of, is that if, I spend a lot of time in and around emergency management. And emergency managers, if you go down to San Antonio, you'll find that they tap into a network of ham radio operators. If you talk to somebody that is or has been a ham radio operator, they will tell you that they usually are in some type of network where they can, when everything else fails, because everybody, we all live and die and breathe with our cell phones. And in a disaster, that's one of the first things that's going to either go or become so more overwhelmed that if you don't have a priority on that network, you're not going to get to use it. And the ham radio operators throughout the history of natural disasters in our nation have been the conduit. So yeah, there's definitely some use to that. This isn't all just fun and games, but the undeniable fact is not only is this an issue for interference, but, we also had residents say that it was an eyesore as well. So there's two things to consider when council, when you're considering this, is the look as well as the electronic interference. So planning and zoning, do you have anything else to add to this now that you've heard everything that council said?
To this discussion, no.
Okay, thank you. So a motion to deny from place 5, a second from place 3. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? To deny this is unanimous from council. Planning and zoning, I'll turn it back over to you for your monthly activity report.
As I said earlier, we had 2 meetings, so we had some other things we discussed. You may remember back in February, Northeast Bible Church, we came before you with a recommendation to approve their master plan, which was actually drawn up in, I think, 2005, 2006. Subsequent to that, they applied for a special use permit because part of their master use plan, they will have to revise a retention pond and drainage in that area. We discussed it for quite a bit, and we didn't come up with a recommendation. We referred it to the city engineer, and as you heard earlier, the city engineer and the neighbors of the Northeast Bible Church are going to get together, have gotten together already offline, and we'll get together at our next meeting to see if they can work out some of the things. The bottom line is the neighbors want to know whether this adjustment to the drainage ditch outflow rate will improve, remain the same, or make worse the drainage problems they have over there. That's basically what they want to know. And hopefully we can come to some conclusion at our next planning and zoning meeting, and to everybody's satisfaction. Another thing we discussed was the streaming of meetings. We're waiting for any input from Freeze and Nichols. I don't believe as yet they've given us their final draft, and consequently, we deviated to discussion about the streaming of meetings, and we had some problems because we wondered how it was going to work, whether it was going to affect our meetings, et cetera, et cetera. And one of the most pointed questions we had was, under whose authority do we have to do it? And do we have to do it? And the answer was city council, and that pretty much took the wind out of those sails. So we're going to be streaming the meetings. And the last thing, we had an excellent discussion of the expansion of 2252. We had a layout, city manager provided us with a layout of the expansion plans for 2252, and we were able to gather around it as a commission and discuss things for about 15, 20 minutes. And we found it very helpful because we'd all attended those meetings individually and got different things from it. And we came up with some good ideas for the future. We will not have a meeting on the 14th. That's the same time as the canvassing for the election. And our next meeting is the 16th, which is the same week anyway. And at that time, we'll look forward to hearing what the city engineer and Northeast Bible Church have worked out one way or the other. That's all I have, Mayor.
Great, sure, thank you. Starting on the right side, questions, comments for P&Z? Well done, sir. Thank you for
Thank you.
all you're doing. Okay, next up is 14.2B, Corey. Mr. Mudge, welcome. Red light's on, it's off right now. There you go.
There you go. There we go.
We don't fly an airplane like that.
Oh, man.
This is
Hope you don't
tough for
fly an
my
airplane
airplane.
like that.
As it says in the agenda, Commissioner Dubois exceeded the meeting absence limits that were established in Ordinance 210. At our March Quarry Commission meeting, following telephonic discussions with Mr. Dubois, the Quarry Commissioners voted unanimously to recommend to the council that Mr. Dubois' termination be waived, as authorized in the ordinance. The commission recommends the waiver for the following reasons. First, Mr. Dubois desires to continue serving on the Quarry Commission. Mr. Dubois has the expectation that he will not miss 3 successive meetings again. And probably more importantly, Commissioner Dubois' tenure on the Quarry Commission has given him invaluable knowledge about blasting and quarry operations that will be useful to us. In summary, the Quarry Commissioners believe that the interests of the Quarry Commission and the City of Garden Ridge will be best served by waiving Commissioner Dubois' termination.
Thank you, sir. So you have before you a recommendation to waive the requirement in ordinance 210, Section 5, termination for Commissioner Dubois. Can I get a motion?
I move to waive the requirement.
Okay, I have place 3 with a motion to waive it. Place 1 with a second. Any further discussion? All in favor?
I did have a discussion.
Oh, we do have a.
Mr. Dubois did let you all know that his job was going to take him out of the state for 4 months?
Yes.
Okay, so he let everybody know. This wasn't he wasn't sitting home in front of the TV. His job actually took him out of the state. Now, if it happens again, he may have to go through the same process, but that's the only time he's missed these meetings was because of work-related issues. So that's why I made my recommendation.
Okay, any other comments?
Yes, may I ask, please, when does his current term expire?
September of 2020.
Any other? Again, a motion from place 3, second place 1. Any further discussion or questions? All in favor? Aye. Any opposed?
Opposed?
Okay. I have place 1, 2, 3, and 4 with an aye, and place 5 with an A. All right. Anything else from the Quarry Commission?
No, sir.
Thank you very much for being here and for bringing the recommendation to us. We appreciate what y'all do. Next up is 14.2C, Water Commission.
Good evening, everyone. We met on April 23rd, and the first thing we had the great joy to do was welcome our new water manager. So his arrival was long anticipated. But I would like to officially and formally commend Mr. Oliveri for his support to the Water Commission during the time that he was the interim water manager. He did a great job. He was very helpful to anything and very responsive to our requests throughout his brief tenure, and we very much appreciated that. First of all, we had a citizen comment. A citizen came forward and spoke about a water leak. He wasn't on the agenda. Therefore, we had to table any request for a water leak for a future meeting. And he had not yet received any water bill, so he wasn't able to tell us what type of charge that he was seeking some relief to. So we'll look forward to hearing from him in the future at perhaps our next meeting or some other meeting in the future. We certainly did discuss our water system issues with our new water manager, and we'll continue to work with him to upgrade the report that you see at your monthly meeting. We're still working on some graphs, and we want to make that report that you see easy to read and so forth. So it'll just speak for itself when you see it. We're continuing discussions on the possible solutions to the water tower leak we had in the past, and that involves SCADA and some possible redundancies that we want to build into the system to prevent that from happening again, or at least reduce the possibility that it could happen again. We also discussed some cost estimates on fire extinguishers, some water level indicators for the groundwater tank, and for some pumps that we need to purchase in the future. Next, under education and training, Councilman McGaugh was kind enough to forward an article to me about the Trinity Aquifer. I briefly informed the commissioners about that and passed out the article to them. So their homework for the next meeting is to come ready to discuss that article. And the reason it's important, it involves the Trinity Aquifer, which is
our primary aquifer, and it talks about both Bell and Williamson County, which is already having some trouble with overdevelopment, and some wells are going dry up there in the Trinity aquifer. Obviously, that could have some sort of development in our area, could have the same effect. And the thing about groundwater conservation districts, they're out there by county, and some are more active or they do things in different ways. It's kind of like school districts. One school district doesn't do their business exactly the way another school district will. So what's going on up in Bell and Williamson County is there's one county that's trying to be very conservative, and another county, adjoining county, which is not being very conservative. And the county that's being very conservative is the one suffering from the overdevelopment in the other county. So we'll study that, and we may come back with some recommendations how we move forward regarding our water supply and other things of that nature. I've also recommended that commissioners go to the next Comal Trinity Groundwater Conservation District meeting in June. The reason being that, along with the previous comments about the Trinity Aquifer, there's 20,000 approved building permits for the Bulverde area. And we welcome the discussion in that meeting to see what type of impact it could have on us. The Trinity Aquifer is not an aquifer like the Edwards. The Edwards has a very fast recharge rate. The Trinity has a very slow recharge rate, hence the problem in Bell and Williamson County. So we don't know what kind of effect at this point that 20,000 new building permits are going to have in western Comal County. We're in the rich side of the county regarding Trinity Aquifer water. They're kind of in the poorer side of the county, but you can still see, despite the fact that the water supply over there isn't as good as ours, they've already allowed 20,000 building permits. People over there are concerned about effluent runoff into their, because of septic systems into their existing wells. Obviously, it could affect us here too. Development around here could affect us. We did receive updates from each commissioner on their different topics that they're working on: water supply, water demand, operation and maintenance, leak adjustments. That won't go away. We're working on a form to allow that to happen. Again, as you well know, it's suspended for the time being. And we're also working on a brochure that's just about finalized for customers to receive. It'll tell them how to read their water bill and some water conservation tips. And that looks to be a really nice product by Commissioner Bullard. And we hope to have all these current projects wrapped up by August timeframe. Next, and the action item for you all would be to formally accept the resignation of Commissioner Ray Pitson, who resigned a few months ago due to health reasons. We did have a formal vote to formally accept that resignation, so that comes on to you to deal with that also. And last but not least, we discussed our current water leases. We currently lease about 65 acre-feet of Edwards Aquifer water. That costs us about $15,000 a year. And what that essentially means is we have a $15,000 insurance policy. Do we want to continue to do that now that we just have another Trinity well online or not? Or do we want to sublease that? That's all discussions we're going to have at the next meeting, and we'll come back to you with a recommendation regarding what we should do with water leases. Pursuant to your questions, that concludes my presentation.
Thank you, sir. So we got a little out of order. The first thing was to accept a resignation. So I'm going to jump to that first before I ask if council has any comments or questions about anything else that you brought up. So in order of, on the agenda, was to accept the recommendation from the Water Commission to accept the resignation of Commissioner Pitson. Can I get a motion?
I move to accept the resignation of Commissioner Pitson with regrets to his health issues.
And I have a motion from place 5. Can I get a second?
Second.
From place 2. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Ray, hold on a minute. I see Ray's back there. Thanks for the time you did spend on the Water Commission, Ray. Really appreciate it.
All right. So, any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? It's unanimous, and yes, I will add Mr. Pitson. we're all on your side and praying for you, and we really appreciate your service on this commission and many other things that you do and continue to do and have done for the city. So keep us posted, and we're with you. Thank you, Ray. And now, to go to the second piece, which is the report that you got, and a lot going on, a lot of great stuff going on, and I really appreciate what the Water Commission's working on. So any questions or comments, starting on the right side?
Yes, what is the term of those, that's 65 acre feet of the lease that we have?
Yeah, I think there's 3 different leases, and I think they all expire different. Actually, there's really 2. One of the leases is ours to the fire department, but I don't have the exact dates. I don't know, Nancy, if you looked that up.
And City Administrator, go ahead.
one lease of just 65 acre feet is a 5-year lease. We do have a 3 acre foot lease, which is a 3-year lease.
Well, the reason I'm curious, I'm a little concerned, as probably a lot of other people, after they read that article, about what's happening in the Trinity. I'd hate to give something up,
Right.
and it come back to bite us.
That article did certainly give us room for pause. We were kind of going in a different direction. That's why I wanted each commissioner to read it and come ready to discuss it at the next meeting.
And we're going to do more research. That was one article, and we can't guide our entire city plan off of an article, so we're definitely going to do some more research. And the Water Commission is and working on that. Other comments or questions? Sure. Ma'am. Again, great work, lots going on, and really appreciate all your folks are putting into this.
Thank you.
Next up is Wildlife Management Advisory Commission.
Is this on? Okay.
It is. If you don't mind, reach up and turn off the podium mic.
Oh, yeah.
Thank you. Oh, yep, just hit it one time. There you go.
Okay. Well, starting out, I had heard at a meeting that I attended, or a forum, that the Humane Society of the United States had offered to manage our deer herd. And I was wondering if I had missed something, so I set up a conference call with the Deputy Director of the Humane Society, Nikki Pritchard. She's in charge of Texas, and also a John Griffin, who specializes in wildlife issues. And unfortunately, we weren't able to have the conference call until yesterday due to scheduling issues, but they did want to assure me that they never manage deer herds for anyone. They did offer to give us some training on working with deer citizen conflict. And when we went over everything that Garden Ridge did, sure, when they went over what Garden Ridge has already done, they felt that we were really doing an excellent job. And then we covered some of the other things that the Wildlife Commission is doing, because they're very interested in habitat, native plants, the monarchs, and they really felt that we're on a good track. I gave them the educational things we were doing, and they did offer to give some educational seminars on things even other than deer. They do have a program to encourage citizens to plant native plants in their yards. They have awards and things like that. And so we've set up some things to discuss different activities to work with the Humane Society of the United States. So I just wanted to put that down there. And also John Griffin, who specializes in wildlife issues, he might want to do an article on Garden Ridge and how we do our commission, because they felt it was kind of a model, doing the education and working with all the wildlife issues. So I thought that was a good thing. Also, we are on a list, I haven't, with John Griffin, that if they do any testing for birth control, that we are on a list because we are such an active community and we are working that way. So, but he said that there's very little research going on in that right now. So, but we're on the list because He just felt our commission was doing a good job. They're willing to do that with us. Other than that, we are working on our final wildlife management plan. The commissioners are to send updates and suggestions to finalize our plan. Jeremiah has been rewriting it as of every meeting, but I do want to remind everybody, it is a living document. It's not going to be a final plan. It's going to be goals and things that we work on, and every month we'll be updating what we've accomplished, what we're doing, and, things always come up. Last meeting, we completed the education session by Linda Valdez, Gardening for Butterflies, and she ran an excellent program. It's so good to see the talent we have in our own community. We've set up for training for the commission to do the counts for the deer census coming up in July. So we'll be setting, that's our educational session for July. And Craig Hensley and his supervisor are going to be giving us the protocols. And our protocol basically is going to be that we're going to only do 3 counts because that's what the state of Texas prefers. Craig Hensley will be going out on every count. Commissioners will be going out. And then we'll ask for 3 volunteers to go out, 1 in each, that are private citizens that are interested in the counts, just so they can, just for transparency. So we'll be doing that training in July. I sent some information to Ms. Kane about doing the CWD testing for roadkill, and we're going to put that on hold until I speak to the woman in charge of the program for CWD testing in the state of Texas. October 2018, there's been a rewrite, and it's not even mentioned in the new regulations. So that is different. And so when she returns, and I don't know exactly when it's going to be, but it's supposed to be shortly, hopefully by my next meeting, I'll have the information from the person in charge of the CWD testing for Texas. Next meeting, also, the CWD testing can be done by individuals, and it can actually be any individual that lives in the city, at least of the age of 18. And all CWD testing, getting the lymph nodes from roadkill can be done by any citizen. The training is free, and it's offered in Texas in different cities. And right now, a lot of different cities, they do their own, but we're not really sure right now because it's not in the regulations in writing. So we'll have to get that. And our next meeting, we're going to be discussing dark skies. We're going to be looking at it as a benefit to wildlife. It's something that's really being looked at across Texas, and I know even the air bases in our area are hoping that different cities adopt it for different reasons than wildlife. But we're going to look at it from that standpoint, as that's what our commission does. So do I have any questions?
Starting over on the left side, questions, comments for Wildlife Management Advisory Commission.
No, I'd just like to commend you again for continuing to be open-minded and seeking out the truth and working, with different members of the city as well. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
I guess I want to thank you for clarifying the Humane Society question, because I thought perhaps I had not heard something as we've been discussing the deer issue, for lack of a better way to put it. That Humane Society does not manage the deer herd in Austin or anywhere else.
Correct.
Okay, I thought I'd missed something, so I really appreciate that being clarified. Secondly, obviously, we have a vacancy now.
Yes,
on your commission. I'm a little disappointed. I had a couple questions for Ms. Hatch, but apparently she's not here. Because she said 1 or 2 things that concerned me. I'd like to have asked her about it, but apparently that's just going to be water under the bridge. But we obviously have some citizens in this community that are very passionate about our wildlife. Perhaps some of them would apply to be on the commission.
Yes.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Sir.
how far we've come, right? We had our first meeting nearly 2 years ago in June of 2017. We were a city administrator, veteran seasoned, city secretary, veteran seasoned, total rookie, council member ex officio, and 7 rookie members of the commission. You volunteered to be the vice chairman at the time. And now, 2 years later, you guys are seasoned veterans. I'll still call myself a rookie.
I don't think so.
You've transformed a plan that the council gave forth in early 2017 to fruition and to reality and to a well-functioning operating organization that advises the council very well on wildlife management for the city of Garden Ridge. So, and you are directly responsible for that. First as the vice chair and then stepping up as David stepped down to take over the chairman duties. You spend a tremendous amount of time in your off time out of the meetings preparing, researching, and we owe you a lot of thanks. Thanks, Cynthia, for what you've done. I've really enjoyed serving with you these last 2 years, and I look forward to where you guys go. And you're about to come to council with your draft and your version of a plan that we said, hey, go forth and conquer, and it's a good plan, and it's a living and breathing document. I appreciate you saying that. So
Thank you.
thank you for what you do.
And I appreciate the time you served with us. I know I even had called you one time to,
Yes, ma'am.
was a little frustrated, and I really appreciate you working with us. Thank you so much.
My pleasure. Thank you.
Great, thank you. Sure.
Yeah, 2 quick things. There is a big article on dark skies. I think it's in Texas Parks and Wildlife magazine. So it is becoming a big issue in Texas, and you can get a hold of one of those, the articles there. I think it's TPW magazine. And the
I'll
other
look
thing
again.
is,
Thank you.
I appreciate your leadership because you're a real compliment to our little city. Thank you very much.
Well, thank you. It's a pleasure.
Ms. Segovia, I can't even come up with the words to tell you how much I appreciate your insistence on going to facts. It's no secret that a lot of people seem to live and breathe off of blind assertions, accusations, and unfounded statements. And to go to the actual individuals and say, okay, what are you doing? And to explain to them what we're doing is a huge step and a very important thing, because I can tell you that there are people that have made opinions on what's going on based on these blind assertions that some people have made and one of them that you just disproved tonight. Your approach has always been facts. Your approach has always been to go to these sources and go to the proper authorities. And please don't stop doing that, because there's some people that are never going to listen, but there's nothing we can do about that. But the fact of the matter is this city is in great hands with you and the folks that are on your commission working these issues. It's not always popular, as we all know, but the fact of the matter is you're sticking to science and sticking to facts in the face of emotion and fiction. And I can tell you that we all very much appreciate it, and I think that you're doing the city a tremendous service. The other thing is I'll tell you that I apologize, because in one way I was actually responsible for a commissioner staying on your commission who then saw fit to besmirch and make wild accusations to assassinate the character and the operation of the commission and throw those out and then leave. And it's kind of the MO that we've been seeing in a lot of these, and you had to deal with it, and you're the one that's sitting there as the chair having to deal with this. And so on behalf of the city, thank you for taking the slings and arrows, and I guess maybe publicly I apologize for being the person that voted to keep that person on that commission, because apparently I was mistaken, and I'll say that publicly. So thank your commissioners. We'll find you somebody else. It doesn't matter what their opinion is about, we just want somebody that is willing to do the kind of things that you're doing, look for the facts. But thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Okay, moving on to item 4.2C, which is Parks Committee. Mr. Trow. Do we need to take a break?
The light won't stay on, is it? Okay. Good evening, Mayor and Council. I'd like to start off giving you an update on the pocket parks. Excuse me. Regency Oaks Park, we're going to be putting a wooden swing set in there as opposed to a galvanized swing set, primarily because of the generous donation that we received for that park. And also, we think a wooden swing set would be better suited and complement that park's natural beauty. So we don't want to disrupt that. So Mr. Steinmetz and I are going to be looking tomorrow at a place that has the wooden swing sets and see what we can find there. For the Regency Oaks Park, we'll also be adding a trash receptacle to that park. Harvey B. Bell Park, which is in Oak Meadows, we're going to be implementing the equipment and making that dedication on May 25th. I've invited, as of today, Nancy Bell and the Lions to attend. I've sent an email to Mr. Richard Holloway. He's always my go-to work guy for the Lions, and I'm sure I'll hear back from him tomorrow. And I'll send an invite also to Oak Meadows resident Norm Pallister, who was the first one to address the naming of the park to be Harvey B. Bell. So we'll get the residents involved there. It's going to be a very easy park to do. It's ready, cleared off. It's just going to be installation of the equipment, putting some mulch down, have a few hot dogs afterwards. 2 hours, I think we're going to be in and out, and we won't need the services of Public Works this time around either. Fairview Circle Park. Been discussing some ideas of how we can get the scouts involved in that park, either to assist or to take ownership of that park for the construction, additions, and for the maintenance of that. But that'll be the next park that we'll be working on after the Oak Meadows RVB Bell Park. Any question on the pocket parks?
Council, any questions on the parks?
Okay.
Councilor, go ahead.
Paul Davis Park, Pavilion number 3. We were looking at the old restroom facility up there and putting Pavilion number 3 there. And we were looking at sailcloth coverings and so forth. But, in trying to get more people to enjoy the full park, we're going to be looking at putting that pavilion on the newly cleared side of the park. So that'll be basically right field, between right field and the end property line. We'll be looking for yeah, okay. I saw the wheels turning there. I wanted to make sure you knew. Okay. We'll be looking for a location there. And tomorrow, again, I'm going to have Mr. Steinmetz pretty much for 3/4 of the day tomorrow. We've got a lot of running around to do and a lot of things to buy for the different parks. And for the Paul Davis Park, we're going to be adding 4 more picnic tables out there in that area, 3 benches, and a couple of trash receptacles out in that area also. The pavilion that we're looking to install, I'll have some pictures for y'all. I'll give them to the city administrator to share with y'all. It's an idea we saw at a local business that does this type of work, or I should say they provide the materials for it. And it does not have a sailcloth roof. It has a galvanized roof, and I think it'll be very attractive out there. Once we get those pictures and everything, I have to still run that past the Parks Committee to get their buy-in on it, but hopefully they'll accept it. Before the 4th, we're planning on having it in before the 4th. It's going to be a tight schedule, but we really are shooting for that. And before the 4th, we're going to need to get some electricity to that pavilion also. We'd like to spread out the 4th of July activities from one side, all on one side of the park, to spread them out around the park. And we got a couple of new additions to what we had last year that I think will help us move people around in the park and get them scattered. And with speaking of the 4th, we are starting to talk about the festivities. Also in Paul Davis Park, Pavilion number 1 has 3 crepe myrtles in front of it. And just as of yesterday, I heard that our tree arborist that did the work at the playground, the newest playground there, suggested that we remove 2 of those crepe myrtles because they're very sickly. We're going to leave 1 that's healthy. And he's also suggesting that we defer from adding any more oak trees in that park for diversity right now. And considering the symptoms that are showing up in the park, I think that's a wise decision that we get away from totally relying on the oak trees in that park. Therefore, we're going to be exploring some tree options to fill in those 2 areas where those crepe myrtles are coming out. That's all I have. Do you have any questions?
Starting over on the right side, questions, comments for Parks Committee? Councilwoman McCall.
I'll speak to the scout part of that briefly. It was thrown out to the Patrol Leaders Council, as Boy Scouts is boy-led, this is the boys, at the last meeting, which was Monday. It's a topic of discussion. It may be something that could be accomplished for an Eagle project. And then somehow we'd have to figure out the ongoing maintenance, but it is a possibility still. So we'll keep talking about it. These things take time in the Scouts, though.
Troop 828 Park sounds pretty good.
It sounds awfully good to me, too.
Ma'am, anything? Yeah, please convey our thank you to the Parks Committee for all that y'all are doing. And keep in mind that as we put in Harvey B. Bell Park in Oak Meadows, that also creates another second-order benefit, but creates another child-safe zone in that area as well for a lot of the people that live over there. And then the same thing will happen in Fairview Circle when we launch into Fairview Circle, or possibly Troop 828 Park. But nevertheless, thank you so much for making sure all that's happening. We still are looking for people, whether it's companies and local businesses, or it's families, or it's individuals that would like to sponsor. You heard Mr. Trout talk about we're replacing some equipment with some hardier, heavier equipment, and we're not opposed to putting a plaque on a wooden swing set that says donated by the Miller family. But in all seriousness, there's a lot of opportunity there, and it'll just make our parks better. And, every time we build a park, they come. We weren't even done with that last park, and there were kids playing in it. So this program has lots of benefits for lots of people, children and parents alike, and it's exciting. And can't thank you all enough for what you're doing. Thanks.
Okay.
Next up is Volunteer Garden Ridge.
If the city administrator wants me to give the number, or you would like to give it?
Go ahead.
I was told the number is 244 hours.
244 hours.
Nothing else to add.
And, well, I will add something to it, and only because if I wait till it's listed later on in the agenda, there'll be even fewer people here because the rest of you will have melted too. But under volunteers in our city, in Volunteer Garden Ridge, a volunteer organization, the Garden Ridge Women's Club, just recently donated over $1,000 to the city, $750 library and $300 animal services. And that's a big deal. $750 in library and $300 animal services goes a long way. And so publicly want to make sure that everybody knows that the Garden Ridge Women's Club is still doing a great job of supporting the city and the efforts that we undertake in the city. So anything else for
No,
Volunteer
sir.
Garden Ridge? Anybody else up here? Thank you very much, sir. Next up, we're going to item 15, the updates. City Administrator report on projects. Ma'am.
I provided in your council packet an update on the remaining 2015 CIP funds. As of today's date, we had $128,128.67. We're moving along with projects. To remind you that the drainage projects are the Sumac Cove project as well as the Benzal project. Our goal is to have all of these projects completed, including the park, community center, and the drainage, by October 1 of this year. I think Stephen may have some updates also concerning the parks and community center projects.
On the community center project, we still have one major outstanding thing to complete. That's the upper ceiling panels. They're kind of like sun panels where you get a little bit of light in. We're trying to determine what color and what type we want to get. We've narrowed it down to something that has a 10-year warranty on it. We're just waiting for one of the contractors to bring us some decent samples so we could actually put up there and have a couple people look at it and see which they think is the best fit for the community center. There's a little bit left work on the front landscaping where we're going to have to rebuild the little brick sitting area that's by the front patio of the community center. We should have that completed this month. Paul Davis Park, the Parks Committee along with myself have been looking at designs and pavilion location. We're hoping to have the pavilion up before the 4th of July, but if it doesn't look like we're going to be able to finish it, we will delay that till immediately after. Like Mr. Charles said, we were looking at possible designs that you'd see at Keller Materials over there in Selma, kind of a metal roof with a stone exterior, give it a little bit of, it looked pretty nice out there in the middle of the new cleared area. We're looking to make that pavilion maybe about 18 by 22 feet long. So it'd be a pretty good sized pavilion along with electric. We've kind of narrowed down what type of basketball court we're looking to do. Basically a regulation size half court of 35 by 50. Hoping to have this completed before October. That kind would probably be, it'll be a, what is that called? Tension instead of rebar, so it wouldn't have no gaps or no, what do they call them? Expansion joints in it, which would prevent cracking. And it would have a surface, kind of like you would see on a tennis court, so it wouldn't be a white slab which would reflect heat. So we're looking at that. We've had a bid for that so far. We're looking into more details about that. We could possibly do the site work ourselves to save a little bit of money. We still have automatic faucets to purchase for the bathrooms, a baby changing station for the men's bathroom. We still need to purchase an oven for the concession stand, or what used to be called the barbecue hut. We probably will be purchasing maybe two to three outdoor message boards so we can put throughout the park area so to keep people informed that are visiting the park. Like Mr. Trout said, we're going to purchase some more benches for out there in the trail. We still need to purchase permanent trash cans for the pocket parks. That way they're unmovable, so no wildlife can get into them, and we'll have somebody out there dumping them. Like Mr. Trout said, we'll be shooting, and we should have all the community center and park CIP projects completed before October.
Comments or questions? Well, and it's kind of going back, you taking it back to City Administrator. This was her topic, but CIP projects. Any questions or comments for either one of them on the CIP? Okay. Thank you. And next item is also City Administrator Paul Davis Park fencing.
We received the survey of the Paul Davis Park. We now have an accurate linear feet for the fencing that we need to install. So we are going back to the vendors that had submitted proposals, giving them the new updated linear foot total, and having them resubmit new proposals based on that figure. We hope to have a contract or have negotiated contract on the fencing, I would say within the next 2 weeks, and definitely prior to our June council meeting.
Okay, thank you. And as a refresher, you've already authorized City Administrator to negotiate that contract. Any questions on the fencing, starting with left side?
No, thank you.
Okay. Plumbing Inspector. Item 3.
Okay. I recently have found a company that can perform our plumbing inspections for us, and not only plumbing inspections, but they could provide some backup building inspection services for us should we need them. It is BB Inspection Services. We have signed a contract, and they will begin on May 21st. We are letting our contract with our current temporary building and plumbing inspector run through its end, which ends on May 20th.
Any questions or comments for City Administrator on the plumbing inspector update? None? Okay, moving on to item 15B, Mayor's Projects Communication Report. City sign, just to let you know, pushing the message out there to vote. I think we're somewhere around 20% right now. Is that right, Ms. Spencer? And which admittedly is good for a local-only election, but it's Garden Ridge, and we can do much better than that. So the early voting, the sign, we had 3 messages over 5 days. For the election, there's going to be 3 messages over 3 days leading up to it. Also, we've had it in the grapevine. So tell everybody you know, vote. Problem is when people are happy, they don't think they need to vote, and they find other things to do. There is one more day to vote. I actually got notes from a couple of people that thought there was some more early voting this week, but there isn't. And the next voting opportunity is the last voting opportunity, 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. this Saturday, May 4th. So please, friends and neighbors, get them out there and tell them we want to get that percentage up. Wrote an article that should be hitting your mailboxes to talk about that in the grapevine as well, that it's important that we demonstrate, regardless of who you're for or any of that stuff, but just to demonstrate the percentage to show people that are external to our city and to Precinct 205 that we vote, and we need to be listened to, and we need help on various items external to our city. Also, while I'm on the topic of the city sign, we'll have a message for 4 days about the farmer's market.
Will this be before the farmer's market? Or
No, it'll be after saying you missed the farmer's market. No, it'll all be before the farmer's market. So, yeah, making sure people know about it. We also have a grapevine has mentioned the farmer's market, and I would just ask everyone on council to spread the word. It's the first one, but we want to get a good start, get some good momentum on a farmer's market for Garden Ridge. It's pretty exciting. And we're going to talk more about the farmer's market here later on in the agenda. Citizen contact report. We've had an issue in one part of the city where when we redid, under the CIP, when we redid a circle, it made the pavement of the street, the circle, a little smaller. And the trash trucks aren't able to turn around without doing multiple, kind of the 3-point turn thing, which is not good for a big trash truck with big tires and lots of weight digging into the pavement. So we've asked and we've had citizens give us the feedback about that. And that is the reason I'm mentioning this, is it's fantastic because we wouldn't have known about this otherwise. We don't, none of us live on that circle, but had a couple of people actually over the course of the last month or so tell us about it. And so we're communicating, and Mr. Steinmetz is helping with this, to communicate to to Republic that they have agreed to drive down, or back down and drive out, to avoid those turns and that digging into our pavement. So that's a great thing. I appreciate those folks coming forward to us. Another one that we had, and this is about a dozen people through personal appearances here, email, phone calls, asking us very specifically to respond to the infamous letter that we discussed at our last council meeting. We elected to not go too strong on the response as far as, sending it out to people or anything like that. But if you, as you did approve the minutes, you should have seen in the minutes that a synopsis of what I said to refute the letter, that still no one will step forward and take any responsibility for sending irresponsibly to our citizens. So that was another citizen contact. And I said that multiple personal appearance, people coming up here asking to speak to me saying, hey, you need to do something about this. You need to send something out and let people know about that. So some people felt pretty strongly about it. That was great. That was really good to see. Okay, moving on to city facility update, the audiovisual upgrades. We're streaming tonight, for those of you that may not have known. We're working out some kinks. We're still working the encoder and the delays and some of that, but it is being streamed right now with a slight delay. We also, for those of you that may have noticed, our agenda format changed slightly. More things have been promoted to major numbers, and that is to be more accommodating to the indexing to iCompass, to be able to have a citizen say, I want to know what they said when Mayor was talking about citizen contact report, and they'll be able to click on that part of the agenda and see the video of my smiling face talking about that thing. So we're working on that. We expect that we'll have those kinks worked out, but I want to turn it over to the person that is making it happen, and the person that has been the point guard for the contracts and contractors and timing and working it out in the middle of voting, getting people in here after the voting was done to work on it and everything else. I mean, she's been doing a fantastic job. So Marissa, what do you have to add to that?
Thank you.
Birthday girl, yes.
Yes, thank you. I think you said it great. We are live streaming, for those that didn't know, but what you see is not what we've been talking about this whole time, because the indexing and the iCompass agenda are not complete yet. So this is basically a trial for us. We have the capability to stream as of last Thursday night, and I was able to get them in here and install that encoder. However, we still have some kinks to work out between our IT provider and the techs with the company. I'm hoping to schedule both of them to be on site together next week when we don't have many things going on in here. So hopefully they'll be able to communicate their issues straight to each other and not through me.
No more of the who's on first and pointing fingers like this.
Yes.
Anybody have any comments or questions on the city facility update? Over here. Oh.
I want to commend you for making this before, did I say July it would be done? You all got it done before that.
Well, it's not done yet, but thank you.
It's right here, it works.
Yeah. Next is the ordinance revision process. As you well know, P&Z is still working the gargantuan task. I told somebody I'd work in the word gargantuan in this meeting. No, I'm joking. And also the water ordinance as well, or water ordinances. So we're in the middle of working those. TxDOT coordination and Garden Ridge traffic flow. You heard a little bit about the traffic flow and working, getting folks off of 3009. I've watched it, and particularly in the beginning and the end of the periods when it's happening, it's relieving about 15, maybe maximum number of cars off of 3009 because they are doing the 2 lanes. We have some issues that the chief's working through, and of course, that we're not stopping there. We still need to get the ISD to understand that there are other options, but they have to help us with this, because I personally am very concerned about the stack up of traffic on a highway where people are driving 60 miles an hour. But no other updates, I just haven't had the time in the last 30 days. That's it for mayor's projects. Anybody have any questions on any of that? Sir?
Yeah, concerning the Garden Ridge Elementary School traffic flow, I'm glad to see them go to the double lanes. My grandkids go to, 2 of them, go to Founders Classical Academy on 1518, almost to Interstate 10, and they do that double stacking, and it works great. Everything goes pretty much twice as fast. They regulate it very well, and it's just in and out, in and out. So you might, see if anyone's interested in going over there and seeing how they do it.
Thank you. Anything else over here? Sir? Sure. Yeah. Okay, moving on to item number 15C, City Council projects. Starting over on the right side, Councilman McCall, you asked for items number 1 and 2, so they're all yours.
Still working on them. I hope to have something by the next meeting.
So to be clear, do you want these both to be left on the agenda for next one?
Yes.
Okay. Got it. And next up is Councilman Erickson. You have the next 3. Floor is yours.
Thank you. So on Saturday, the 6th of April, we had 14 people out there to volunteer their time to clean up Highway 2252, all the way from the intersection of 3009 down to basically where Weber Auto Works is. And we covered parts of the entire stretch. So we had families there, we had friends and families, and we had some new faces, and some of the old, or not old faces, but people that come out and volunteer to do that. Yeah, Brian? Yeah.
I'm an old face.
So, thank you. We collected 28 bags of trash and a lot of debris that filled up the back end of the truck numerous times, even after dropping people off and going back and going, oh, I got more bags to pick up. I appreciate your patience with TxDOT. I called them on the Monday after, the first business day, to say, hey, we got 28 bags to pick up and some debris, and they've got a lot of places to cover, so sometimes it takes a week to almost 2 weeks to pick it up, but I appreciate your patience with that. I don't have a date for the next one. I won't be on council then, but I will advertise through Nextdoor and hopefully perhaps the city webpage to put that on there to ask for volunteers. So it was 42 hours of volunteer time, Nancy. I know you're tracking that. Farmers Market. Can I move on?
Yes, sir.
Farmers Market. So what began as just an idea, and hey, wouldn't this be cool to not have to drive all the way to New Braunfels or down to the Pearl District to see a Saturday farmers market, is coming to fruition. The 3 main people that are making that happen are Kat, Nancy, and Marissa. They put together a tremendous amount of work into this whole thing. Kat designed the logo do we have the logo? Can we put it up there? No? Okay, no logo. Kat designed it. Do we have another map that we could put up there rather than? Yeah, there it is. So Kat designed that among 2 other logos, and I thought this was really good, and she liked it too. So we've got this. Right now we have 11 vendors signed up. Is that right, Kat? 11 vendors signed up? 13 vendors signed up. So my goal going into this whole thing was to get, if we could get 10, then we were doing really, really well, because we're competing with a professional private farmers market organization out of New Braunfels The same thing down at the Pearl, and also we're competing with the flea market on I-35. So if we could just get some sort of start to this, that's the spark that can get the fire going. So great job. I think we should keep it open for a little while, and we'll close it next week, just to keep people coming as long as we have room. And the key to this whole thing is going to be us, not the vendors. It's going to be the citizens, and my 4 days on that sign before the market. It's going to be us showing up and showing the vendors that, hey, we are excited about this, buy them out, and participate with what they're doing. Come here and listen to the Chords of Grace, right?
Yes.
For a 2-hour private concert for us, and show the support. And then those vendors that'll come back, hopefully the next month, if we choose to do this again, will tell their vendor friends, and so on and so on and so on. That's the key to make this work. What would be great is if we get so many vendors signed up that we got to expand or close it off because we can't fit anybody else out in the parking lot. So that's the key to it. You guys all volunteered to do stuff. I had a list of jobs on a map. We're not going to show that right now. Oh, we can? Put the map up there. Okay. So, yeah, it doesn't have my list of jobs and assignments and that I sent to Kat today. And the reason it doesn't have our names and assignments up there as council members, because you all said we're going to volunteer, right? Is because Kat and Nancy and Marissa already have all that covered. So your jobs as council members and specific volunteers are to show up sometime around 8 and 8:30 to make sure things are going right, walk around, help out, figure out something to do and go do it, so that Kat and Nancy and Marissa and I aren't jumping around everywhere. So thanks for coming out in advance, Brian, right? You'd be there?
Volunteer all this.
Oh, it was last month.
Was it really?
Yeah, it was. It's actually in the minutes. It should be. So,
Wasn't recorded.
so Kat, what am I missing? Now, and I'm not trying to steal your thunder, because this is all you, so talk to me. Talk to us.
So we will have the Chords of Grace. They will be here from 10 to 12 for the farmers market. They're going to be set up right outside where the library is. Although it is labeled incorrectly on this map, it says the police department. And then where those black blocks are, that is where we will have all of our vendors. There's also going to be a food truck that will be there. And we'll have trash cans set up throughout the layout so that you can dispose of anything that you eat while you're there, because there will be food products that will be sold. That's about all I have right now, other than things that we need to discuss.
Okay. And we're going to meet on Monday at 4 o'clock, right?
Yes, sir.
Fantastic. So come out to the farmer's market. It'll be a good time. And let's have a great showing so that we can generate the energy and the momentum to see if we can keep it going. And thank you for the city for putting this together and making it happen. And Mr. Mayor, if we can, unless there's anything else on that, based on our conversation previously, because we got one more council meeting, right? To survey the results or canvass the results of the election. So I'd put the closing statement off
Okay,
until.
so we're going to defer on number 5. Before we move any further, though, I want to see if anybody on council has anything about number 4, about the farmer's market. Starting on the right side.
Yeah, two things. When we all volunteered, I volunteered my wife, if you remember.
Oh, I do remember that.
However, I'm going to show up anyway. Plus, she's in Germany. But notwithstanding that, what are the hours again?
Funny you should ask. Saturday, May 11th, from 9 a.m. to 1 p.m.
Thank you. Sir, anything? Mike? Okay. Ma'am?
Might be last minute, but any chance we could implement some recycling boxes?
Sure. Kat, Marissa, Nancy?
Figure it out.
Passing the buck. That's all I got, sir.
Thank you.
Oh, Nancy.
Oh, ma'am?
I will say that one place that volunteers are going to be needed is checking the vendors in and showing them where they need to park. So that's the area that I think that volunteers are going to be needed. I didn't want no one to not
That's for
volunteer now.
Brian Lancy at 5:30 a.m. is where we need you.
There you go.
I'll
He's
show
always
up
up
about
there.
8.
He's always up to it.
Do we need any quality control on the food products from these vendors?
As long as you bring money, yes. Anything else on the farmer's market? Thank you. This has tremendous potential. Meet your local farmers and crafters, build community, and it's promoting local food. Perfect. Well done, Kat. Thank you very much. I know you put a lot of work into this, and we appreciate it. And staff for helping her when she asked for some help on stuff. Okay, next up is item number 6, Councilman Lancy.
It's been brought to my attention by at least a couple citizens that we have a problem with excessive speed on at least one road, and I'm sure there's others in the city. Doctor, I looked at Regency Run, and you have about 4 islands that break up. You actually have to drive around to get to from one end of this road to the other. So I think that's about all I can help you with as far as slowing the speed down. There's nothing else to do there unless we added some more speed limits. Anyhow, my main concern is Timber Rose. Timber Rose is about 0.6 of a mile long, and it's a straight shot from the top of it to the bottom. There's only 2 stop signs. No, there's only one stop sign at the top, and that's the northern part of the street. And there's only one 30-mile-an-hour speed limit sign. Is there ways we can get, Chief, we can add additional speed limit signs? Do you think that would help? Can we possibly do a 3-way stop at the corner of Blazing Star and Timber Rose? That way it breaks up about at least a third, or if not a half of the way down Timber Rose as far as people building up speed. And
we can put as many speed limit signs as you want as a council.
Right.
As far as 3-way stops, yeah, because doing it at Teakwood would be useless because they're slowing down usually to make that curve there
Right,
anyway. So you've only got 2 blocks on the north side of that from Goldenrod down, so that I don't see a need to put anything over there. So between Garden Ridge Drive and Teakwood, that could be something that could be entertained, putting a 3-way up, either Blazing Star would be
break up
that'd be
that
the halfway
long-
point.
Yeah, that
And that
long
would
spans
slow
of
that
road.
long stretch down.
Yeah.
Don't know how well that's going to be received, but we can sure try it.
Well, the only other alternatives I was thinking, Chief, is, and they're a little bit more invasive than that, is putting out the word that we have a no tolerance speeding policy in the city. And that's getting everybody a ticket to speeding, to slow it down, or we put in speed bumps. And I don't want to see either one of those scenarios take place.
I will say very strongly, I don't agree with speed bumps just because they tear up emergency vehicles.
Yeah.
Your fire trucks and ambulances and all that, it's really hard on the suspension of those, and so it's counterintuitive. So hopefully we won't look at speed bumps.
Well, do you have any other ideas for Timber Rose? That's been the only one I've had a lot of conversation about. I'm sure
Okay.
there's other areas in the city that.
I mean, if we're having that many issues with it, it's difficult to run traffic there because it's a downhill slope, not a lot of trees out by the road. Whenever the guys try to sit up toward either Sumac or Goldenrod, they can be seen so far away that everybody knows they're there.
I can get you authorization to pull off in somebody's driveway and do it.
Well, the problem with that.
They've offered to
then
do that.
It's difficult when you start getting off the roadway, then you start talking about the angles of the radar and it affects the speeds and all that kind of stuff. So that plays another part into that. I think we should look a little bit closer at a stop sign.
Yeah,
Splitting that
I don't
stretch.
think anybody's complaining about you all being out there, because you have you have helped.
Oh, no,
You
I
can't be
get
out
that.
there all the
No,
time,
no,
so.
and I know people, there's a lot of people that have offered their driveways in other parts of the city as well and said we could sit on their property, but like I said, sometimes that isn't always the best thing to do because of angles when you're using those Doppler radars, so, I think we can look closer into this stop sign, throughway stop, to split that stretch.
Thank you. That's all.
And since it's a city street, we don't have to worry about TxDOT to do that.
Thank you.
Anybody have any comments or questions on this? Yeah, so my question is, downside to putting a three-way stop there is it only people are going to complain that they have to stop?
That, I mean, that's the only thing I see.
And me too. And if it's, and if that's going to slow this traffic down, and the people that live there are the ones that are complaining that people are racing in front of their house, it seems to me that a three-way stop might help those people, give them some relief.
It's similar to what we're dealing with right now over on Hickory Bend about people running the stop sign.
Yes,
And the people running the stop sign are the people that live there in that area,
yeah.
hence the tickets we've written. So, yeah, so, you know, it's a catch-22. You've got local residents that are having the issue, and unfortunately, it's going to be residents that are causing the issue. So we should be able to curb both of those at one time.
Well, let's take a look at it. I think that might be a solution, and again, as you said, it's our road. We have control over that, and if the people that live there are expressing concern about their safety and their family safety there, and it's not going to put anybody out that much to stop at a stop sign, then maybe that's what we need to do. Okay. Work with Public Works. Good. Thank you for bringing it up. Okay, and then over to Councilman Arvidsson for item number 7.
Okay, and it should be sitting in your packet in here. It didn't get added to the actual one, so we probably can't talk great length about it, but I brought a copy of the proposed changes that are being stuck into the legislation involving quarries and aggregate industry. In particular, this was done about Vulcan Construction Materials. Representative Biederman brought this House bill up. It does have an impact on quarries and the way they would operate. It may be something we want to review and come back to as far as, do we as a city want to take a stance on this bill and endorse it or not? And I'm not even sure what our restrictions are on how we can do that, but I'm trying to figure out how much I can actually talk here, Cynthia, because we didn't have it in the actual the agenda.
No,
packet,
it's okay,
this
because it's
whole
on the
bill.
agenda.
Okay.
It's on the agenda.
If you look at the changes that are on here, then it adds in a requirement for them to have a water permit on top of their air quality permit when they do quarrying. It also brings school districts into it. It also changes the zone from a quarter of a mile out to a mile for operation of a quarry from residential areas and schools and all those kind of things. So it does have a positive impact, I believe. I think it definitely warrants all of us on the council reviewing it and deciding what stance we want to take on it.
That was completely a policy decision of the council.
Okay.
And for the record, the city can endorse legislation that the city believes is in the best interests of the city. It's not about a person, it's about legislation and protection for, perception of protection for the city. So yes. This is House Bill 3798. Do you happen to know the status of it right now?
The last I saw of it, and I actually checked on it this morning, which is why I decided to print it out and bring it in here, was it was sitting in committee right now.
Okay.
Getting some words out to Representative Biederman or et cetera probably would carry some weight right now.
Certainly.
Quite frankly, maybe we want to add it to the 14th. I don't want to jam that one full. It's all about the election, but.
Yeah, let's
Or
do
is that too
that.
quick?
No, it's not. The problem is this could go to the floor before we reconvene. So the 14th probably is what we need to do. So I'd ask council all to read this, and we'll have a quick discussion. It doesn't have to be a very long discussion. It could be, yeah, we agree with this, and we want to express the Garden Ridge's endorsement of this, and we can send it to our state rep and senator. So,
okay.
Because it'll end up going to Senate as well. All right, good. Anything else on that?
That's about it.
Okay, so city administrator, let's make sure we have that on the 14th. It's growing a little bit, I know, but this is has a bit of a certain sense of urgency to it.
Thanks, Todd.
Good, thank you. Okay, that's it for item 15C, City Council projects. Next is discussion, future agenda items, and I will start over on the right side. Anything for future agenda?
I would like to talk about getting an air conditioner for this this building, this area right here.
Amen.
No, I'd like to get Nancy on board. Y'all give some time, and Nancy and whoever else. I'd like to discuss next time about the huge number of signs we have in the city, from the church signs to what's hanging on the chain link fence at the school, and all the signs that we have throughout the city that are just they've passed their expiration time. They're looking like the devil. So that's what I want that.
It'll be on there.
agenda.
Yes,
Okay.
sir. Thank you. Ma'am.
Not necessarily June, but in the near future, I would like to reiterate the issue of animal services and cats and dogs running free.
Got it. So we'll take a look and we'll check in with you as we're working the agenda to see if you have something you want to talk about at the next one. Good. All right, reattacked. Anything else? I'm sorry. Next is item 17, citizens' comments. Remember, this is the 2-minute, and same rules apply, except for you don't have to have signed up ahead of time. So invite anyone that would like to come up and speak for 2 minutes. Please feel free.
And if I can add real quick, after you speak, if you'll come sign in with me. Thank you.
Yes, ma'am, I should have said that. Go ahead, sir.
Bob Crawford, 9507 Gloxinia. And I wanted to, an addendum to my earlier comments. I looked because what I realized from the discussion after I spoke, I believe the issue is power, not necessarily the antenna or the height. But what's knocking our TV out and the internet is the power he must be using. And I looked, the limit is 1,500 watts. And then novice or technicians are limited to 200 watts. Now, what I don't understand is how we would know. I don't think we have the ability to check that, what kind of power he's transmitting. But that's what will knock out the TV and internet, is the power more than the height of the tower. So you put off one thing, but I don't think it's fixed my problem, because if he's exceeding the power requirements, that's going to continue to knock out my TV. And the second thing on the speeding, I'm much more concerned about speeding on 3009. And is it my understanding that the city has no ability to lower the speed limit on 3009?
Sir, this is,
Oh,
unfortunately,
okay.
we can't respond.
I
Be
wish.
glad to talk to you about it, but
Sure.
can't do it now. Anyone else? And remember, we need you to sign up over with our city secretary. Birthday girl, yeah. Go ahead,
Mr.
sir.
Mayor, Council, Ken Kniper, 8891 Shanetal Road. It's no longer High School number 4, it's now Davenport High School. And at the last school board meeting, they are going to lengthen the left turn lanes, acceleration lanes for the buses, because TxDOT ruled out them having a traffic light at for that high school. Their reasoning was it would interfere with the one at Shanetal North, that it's too close together and they don't know if they could coordinate get them in sync. But anyway, there will not be a traffic light there thanks to TxDOT's, their ruling. And it's costing the school district a little bit more money to do more milling of the roadway. And that should start within the next 4 to 6 weeks. And that was an estimation of guess time. Nothing else really of much importance other than they are contemplating a TRE, because we need 4 elementary schools in order to do that. And now hopefully we're going to get some relief from being not only being a fast growth district and a fast growth county, but also we're getting money taken away from us every year under the Robin Hood plan. So hopefully for the next 2 to 3 years, Robin Hood will not affect Comal ISD, and we'll get to keep more money and put more money into getting good teachers, which we have a lot of. We are not the highest paying district in our area. We're the next to the lowest as far as what we pay our teachers and administrators, believe it or not. And we're still getting high quality. I can see that by going to the meetings and watching the teachers, how they collaborate for getting ready for school and how they produce, getting good growth in their STAR testing and what they do to get it. So it'd be very well for everybody to attend one of their meetings and just listen to what the teachers are doing to get their students prepared for the school year. Thank you.
Anyone else? Going once, twice, 3 times. Okay, we're closing out item 17, moving on to item 18, reports, comments from mayor and city council members. Starting on the left side, any of the things that are on this list, and only the things that are on this list. Ma'am? No, sir. Sir? 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 Sir?
Wake up, John.
I'm trying to see if it's on the list.
Don't talk if it's not. Oh, I'll turn your mic off if it's not.
Yeah, I can squeeze it in. Sponsored events, outreach efforts. I would like to see a little bit closer work with the Humane Society.
Okay. That closes out item 18. Item 19, city council recesses, open meeting, reconvening executive session pursuant to Texas Government Code sections 551076, 551089. At 9. And we'll take, how long, 5? So we're planning to reconvene in there. We'll call it at 9:28.